Welcome to the 31st episode of Vital Questions. As always, I'm your host, Guerrero with
La Co-host.
La Co-host. Man, I don't know how. Listen, this is always what's weird about recording these episodes is that the audience knows how hefty these episodes are before we know how hefty these episodes are.
Yeah, it's been a wild week. So today, just for context, because at the time you hear this, who knows what will have happened. But today is Thursday, January 8th, 10:13 a.m.
When we're recording this.
Yeah. So just so you know, but we tried our best to kind of gather as much information as possible and bring you what we've been seeing regarding the topic of Venezuela.
And why did Trump send troops to Venezuela?
Exactly. But before we dive into this very dense topic, and by the time you see it, you'll see how dense it is with the time span. We did want to take a moment to kind of acknowledge and recognize to ICE activity. Legal observers, for those who don't know, are people who attend law enforcement actions to document and monitor law enforcement behavior. And the ICE agent shot her point blank range several times as she was trying to drive away, even though ICE is claiming that she tried to hit them with her car. She was a US citizen, 37 years old, and a mother to a 6-year-old child who is now an orphan. In addition to acknowledging this horrendous murder, because that's what this was, a murder, it's also the first cautionary point for Venezuelans who think this administration has any good intentions for you. Because again, this is a US citizen who was not doing anything illegal, who, even though this administration is claiming they are, the video evidence is very obvious that she wasn't. She was very clearly trying to drive away.
Yeah.
So this is our first point for everyone that's listening, especially Venezuelans who are, and we'll get into the different reasons, but are understandably to some extent kind of saying, well, why are US people caring about us? You guys only care about oil. You guys only care about this. No, we're trying to warn you.
Yeah.
We're trying to warn you about exactly this, that if this is how this administration is treating US citizens,
Who are exercising their First Amendment right to
Exactly.
record, to inform their neighbors of their rights, who is doing things to protect her neighborhood.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, they are also already trying to label her a domestic terrorist. Not the case. So we do want to just caution that, just set this out kind of out the outright. This just happened. This happened yesterday. And sadly, I think it's a real eye opener for everyone. Although I think I should have already been open because this is not the first murder that ICE has committed.
No.
And unfortunately, I'm a little worried and scared to say that's probably not the last. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you go back to saying about the people of Venezuela, we're gonna get into a lot of it, but I mean, it was disgusting the way they started lying. The entire Trump administration. We covered this on our social media. If you go to Chigger or ENG on TikTok or Instagram, you'll be able to see those videos. We did some deep dives into who Renee was, a mother, a poet. They're still saying reports that she was also in a relationship. They had a 6-year-old. Yes, the 6-year-old kid lost his mother and father with Renee, but parents comes in different ways. And apparently Renee had a partner, a woman that, said we were just dropping. We had a 6-year-old at school when this happened. So that hopefully that kid still has a lot of love and people want to take care of him, but he has lost his mother, and it's a tragic thing. And just
I didn't realize she had a partner.
yeah. There's still some reports out there that it was a partner that she had. And it's just it's in the way they lied to her about her, excuse me. It just goes to show you what we're going to get into, the way this administration lies about everything to get away with these heinous crimes.
Yeah. So rest in peace to Renee, and everyone else has been unfortunately gunned down by ICE, because that's where we're at right now. So turning to our topic, which is also unfortunately very sad because of everything that's happening.
And this happened Saturday,
This
by the
happened
way.
Saturday,
We are
exact
recording Thursday?
Thursday, yeah, January 8th, and this happened Saturday, January 3rd.
That's 5 days ago, and it feels like a different world
Mhm.
because it is.
Yeah, unfortunately. So let's get into it. Here is the Cheeto
On Temu Twitter.
Timu Twitter.
On
Oh, okay.
Temu Twitter.
Oh, Timu Twitter's Truth?
Truth, yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
think
And
that's
then
by Jolly
Twitter,
Ginger.
yeah, and then we're gonna be calling X Twitter just
Yeah.
because that's how I wrote it in my notes because we don't acknowledge X here.
We don't
So
acknowledge.
when you hear me say Twitter, I mean, you know what I mean.
And when we say Temu Twitter, we mean truth.
I'm gonna forget Timu Twitter. That's hard. That's a little like more details.
Okay.
But yeah, anyways, so on Timu Twitter, Trump said the United States of America have
Hold on. Let me put it. Yeah, you do your Trump voice.
President Donald J. Trump. I'm sure in his head that's how it sounds.
Yeah. And by the way, this is like after the attack, and the man.
After at 10 a.m. the night, like they attacked in the middle of the night, so it was 10 a.m.
You remember, you wake up Saturday morning,
Mhm.
and you're like on Instagram and Twitter, and you're like, wait, what is happening?
Mhm.
And then on Temu Twitter, here's Trump being like, yo, I'm about to drop the hottest mixtape. Look out for it at 11 a.m. coming straight out of Mar-a-Lago. I'm like, why are you presenting us when you're going to do the news conference? Like,
Yeah, you remember when politicians would actually share information through, like, I don't know, right? Those were the good old days.
You understand, people don't realize that this is also another promotion tactic.
Mhm.
So you get the first news on Temu Twitter,
Mhm.
and then all over CNN, MSNBC, is his
Mhm.
logo for this. It's such a promotional whore.
Yeah, so it encourages everyone to go on Truth.
Yeah.
Or Timu Twitter and to get updates so that way you know what's happening. And yeah, again,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
So that's how
But
he
yeah,
announced
that's how
that they
he
captured Maduro.
Yeah. But yeah, let's get into the details. So in an operation called Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, on narco-terrorism conspiracy charges. I just do want to acknowledge that a lot of people, especially online, and I've seen a couple of reporters kind of make this comment that given the circumstances under which his last election kind of went down, calling him a president is even questionable, right? Because he didn't actually like, and also calling him a president versus a dictator is kind of a slap in the face also to the actions that he's done in Venezuela. So for all those reasons, I will be referring to this man as Maduro because I don't want y'all in the comments to be like this, that, and the third. And transport Maduro from Venezuela, Maduro and his wife from Venezuela to New York for his trial within hours, which also suggests that they had eyes on the ground and they had kind of connections there to be able to do so quickly. So just given that, and given that there's a lot going on online, I did find a local Venezuelan journalist discussing the explosions and the attack. So let's get into that.
At first, it felt or it sounded like there was a huge truck or like a big plane flying around. And then there was kind of an earthquake. And then, as it was described before, explosions started happening. The sky started to lit up in orange. There was fire blowing. You can still hear the planes right now, but there hasn't been an explosion in a few minutes. Windows are shaking. Everyone's blowing up my phone. We were calling each other. People from outside of the country and inside of the country are calling each other, making sure, are you close to the explosion? What are you seeing? Everyone's on high alert. Again, nobody really knows what's going on, but we can see clearly it's getting bombarded. This is unusual for Venezuela. This is not something we're used to.
Yeah. So Just taking a pause there, we obviously saw some of the strikes. I'll bring that back up over here. So for context, the total number of people injured and killed are still being accounted for, but Venezuelans and Cubans were primarily affected,
Yeah.
both military and civilians. Some reports are saying that more than 80 people were killed in the attack. There were allegedly no U.S. casualties, but some U.S. military members were injured. So of course, Cheeto was bragging about the fact that there were no U.S. casualties, but totally fine with the innocent civilians of in Venezuela that were
Yeah.
affected.
Grandmothers' backyards were blown away. I saw those images.
Exactly.
It was, it's crazy. It was very reminiscent of seeing the first attacks on Gaza on the large scale like that. It's very much. This is why I kept saying you have to care about what happens to other people across the world, because at some point it's going to come to your door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just a final picture here. This is Maduro on the plane on his way. Damage to the country and to people. But there's also, understandably, a lot of people who are concerned because for as much as this man did not deserve to be in power and did not deserve to continue to cause harm to Venezuelans and everyone else that he caused harm to, we also have a world order.
Yeah.
And there's also processes and laws in place to make sure that we don't go into another world war. So that's why, people are a little concerned about a world leader like Cheeto, unilaterally deciding that, hey, I'm just gonna go do this and not get congressional approval before that. So
This is why this topic is so complex.
Mhm.
You have to be able to critical think, and this is why they don't want people to critical think.
Right.
Because you have to be able to put together the fact that Maduro is a dictator,
Mhm.
okay, who is in power illegitimately,
Mhm.
right? Who has done terrible things to his people and should go.
Yeah.
Also, Cheeto is a maniac,
Mhm.
right? Who did this not for the people of Venezuela, please. Not for a moment did he care about Venezuelans. Why is he trying to deport them? Why did he send them to CCOT? What, all the people that went to CCOT, remember, were Venezuelan.
You're taking away my thunder.
Let me say this that people might not know before I take away any more of your thunder. You know that tracksuit that he's wearing?
Mhm.
Do you know that it went viral online?
Oh
It's
my
a Nike
God.
tracksuit, and kids online went out and bought the Nike tracksuit. The prices even skyrocketed, and they're making memes of themselves with like glasses
Oh
and
my
the tracksuit.
God.
If you wonder how anything, listen, we're no different than people are like, oh, I wonder, like during the world of 1812, like how people would have acted if they had Twitter, like the same way. They would have been the same idiots.
Just making jokes about the fact that, hey, we're on the brink of a world war,
But that tracksuit, though,
but y'all go off and get your tracksuit.
go off.
So as we try to dive deeper into why did Trump send troops to Venezuela, let's just recap on some recent history, shall we? So as we know, Trump has been blaming Venezuela for the supposed immigrant invasion, along with a lot of other Latin American countries, for allegedly sending criminals to the U.S., for especially members of Tren de Aragua, supposedly, that Venezuela supposedly sent to the U.S. with no real evidence of that, and for the influx of drugs that are supposedly coming into the US, because it's all supposedly until we prove it, right? Um, so looking at this PBS News article, just pull this up real quick. Six. So this article pretty much summarizes and fact checks some of Trump's statements. The one that I want to get to when we scroll down is Trump's statement saying Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. The article states, quote, there is no evidence Maduro sent members of Venezuelan prison gang Tren de Aragua to government enables Tren de Aragua to operate, the Maduro regime probably does not have a policy of cooperating with TDA and is not directing TDA movement to and operations in the United States, the report says. So, by their own records, they know.
Yeah, this is you remember, man, remember. He's building that narrative. That's crazy. I didn't realize that. I knew we heard so much about Tren de Agua here, but I didn't realize that part of the narrative was that Maduro is sending Tren de Agua up here to destabilize the country, and in doing so, that is a direct attack against us, right? Because he called Tren de Agua a terrorist organization now.
Exactly.
Just build the narrative and just, it's like, in Mexico City, there's a lot of like white women there who have colonized Mexico City with yoga. Do you know what I mean? It's like that. The United States sends all these white yogis there, and you could be like, look, these white yogis are terrorists. They're coming out with the upward dogs. I don't know what you're doing with that upward dog, but we need to like now invade the US because of these yogis. You know what I mean?
Right. That's the same kind of logic where it's just like, no, they're not. I mean, and again,
these people do what they're doing just because they're from somewhere. You shouldn't judge.
Exactly. That has nothing to do with the country or the rest of the people in that country. It's solely with that particular gang. And yeah, no one's denying that they exist. It's confirmed that that's an existing gang in Venezuela, and they've done some damage for sure. And go after them. If you actually have proof that those are people that are affiliated with the gang, then for sure, go after them. But just because people have a tattoo that literally has no affiliation with any gang, because they've already confirmed that Tren de Agua doesn't even use tattoos to kind of show affiliation. But
you know what's an even better analogy than the yogi one? I don't know if you ever seen that show, Sons of Anarchy. So the show essentially is like motorcycle clubs who do illegal things to make money.
Okay.
It's like, whatever. But one of their big story plots is that they actually run guns to Mexico.
Oh, okay.
So, and there is actually reports that a lot of the illegal guns that are in Mexico are actually brought over by U.S. motorcycle gangs and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's an example of, and actually Mexico tried to stop these guns from coming into the U.S. by suing the U.S. government. And guess what? The Supreme Court threw away the lawsuit and said, you can't sue gun manufacturers because people are illegally taking guns into your country and causing the cartels to spring up. Like that is Mexico has just a good enough reason to invade the U.S. saying our cartel issue is exponentially growing because of your motorcycle gangs.
Well, is the Sons of Anarchy thing was based on like true events? Is that what it is?
It's based on clubs that technically Hell's Angel, all these old like white supremacist motorcycle clubs that you think like, why are they messing with Mexico? Hey man, money's money at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? So, and also it doesn't have to be motorcycle gangs. There's also groups of people who just buy a bunch of guns collectively and send it down to Mexico.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's also considered a gang affiliation,
I guess
if
that's
you
true.
will.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
What's
They're terrorists.
gang?
Yeah, what's a gang?
All right, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
But anyways, that's essentially what I'm trying to get at is people in the US do the same thing to Mexico, and the Mexico isn't invading the US for it.
Well, and that's
their sovereignty.
Right, exactly. And that's what's crazy, that like you can't, even if there are like, even if hypothetically, because this part was a little harder to research in terms of his particular affiliations with narco terrorists and all that. We all maybe didn't know, but the New York case is based on narco terrorism charges, right? So there seems to be evidence behind that and all. No. And yeah, but I just think it's really interesting, and a lot of people have pointed it out, that if he is going after Maduro for the narco terrorism charges, then I'm not really sure why most recently, and people may have forgotten this, but the pardon, it says in the highlight, Hernandez had been co-conspirators trafficked more than 400 tons of U.S.-bound cocaine through Honduras between 2004 and 2022. In his pardon announcement, President Trump asserted that Hernandez had been treated unfairly. So clearly we're friends with some drug traffickers, but we're not friends with others. And it's just really interesting because, again, the whole thing of like, it's all the drugs. Well, what do you think this man is going to do? Because he's already been convicted and it's confirmed that he did the thing, and you just gave him a little get out of jail free pass. So why are we friends with some drug traffickers and not others?
The message is we should be friends with no drug traffickers. Kids, Say no to drug traffickers. The more you know. I don't know.
Well, yeah, no, for sure. It's by no means am I encouraging us
No.
to become friends with drug
No,
traffickers. My point is the hypocrisy
Right.
of being like, oh yeah, we're gonna go invade a country and just, pluck out their leader because he's a drug trafficker, yet we just pardoned another drug trafficker. It's a little hard to follow that, but that's the Trump administration for you. So also,
hypocrisy.
right. Also, if you remember, before the January 3rd strike on Venezuela and towards the end of last year, the US was already antagonizing the country by also striking several boats in the Caribbean, claiming without evidence that those boats were smuggling drugs. So look. Article. If we scroll down, there's a section that provides, quote, before the escalation, there had been 35 known strikes against alleged drug smuggling boats in South American waters since early September that killed at least 115 people, according to announcements from the Republican administration. The U.S. had sent a fleet of warships to the region, the largest buildup of forces in generations. So this was right before the strike. Again, they were already trying to antagonize Latin American countries, which again weren't really trying to form up and trying to build up military around them. They're, other than the supposed drug invasion and drug trafficking and all this stuff, which again you just pardoned someone else who was doing it, so that's a little weird. What's the reason?
You know what's crazy?
Mhm.
Listeners of Vital Questions who have subscribed on Spotify and everywhere else that you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe. You may have heard that we were trying to do this Venezuela episode for a while.
Mhm.
And every time we try to do it, something else would happen, and then Trump would do something crazier and crazier. So we're like, oh, we can't really do Venezuela. Now that you're giving me the boat strikes and the warships being sent to the region, you realize, man, this guy really does fool you with a lot of other stuff.
Mhm.
So he can keep pushing the boundaries on what he really wants.
Yeah.
The warship was pushing the boundaries to see, can I kill people and not be held accountable in the sea? I can.
Yeah.
Can I call them terrorists and have nobody do any kind of research or, actually
Or
see
care
or
to confirm? Yeah.
Nope. Nobody cares. Can I say warship to the region? Yes. Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Can I steal oil tankers? Yes.
Oh, right, because that was the other thing right beforehand. Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Can I sanction arbitrarily these?
Yes, I can. Well, now let's take the leader. Can I do that? Yes. Yes, I can.
Apparently. So the next question is
The next question.
was Maduro a dictator? And yeah, but we also might be having a dictator. So I just want to point that out for everybody that yeah, he was a dictator. I think it's kind of generally understood and it's accepted and all that stuff. But let's get into it because I don't understand. We're all
I don't know. Sorry, I'm
Go
pretty
ahead.
good with this. I don't know if this is the best. And if it's the best explanation, listen. Maduro was a dictator who wanted to control his people. At least Maduro saw you as his people.
Mhm.
Trump doesn't even see you as people.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's any better for Maduro. I'm just saying Trump does not care about obliterating every single Venezuelans.
Mhm.
Maduro at least was like, I need Venezuelans because they're my people.
Right.
I'm not saying it's better. They're both dictators, but I'm just saying that old phrase is better stick with the devil you know than the devil you don't exists for a reason.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think that's the hard thing for people to see, especially in Venezuela, because that's what they've been living under. And I can't
speak to that on that level.
Will always
I'm
acknowledge
privileged out here talking about
sure.
in the safety of my studio. I gotta get a real studio. We gotta get a real studio.
and I've heard that sentiment right from Venezuelans, especially that are there, that are just like, these Yankees are safe in their little blue little towns. Blah blah blah.
Get it?
You're right.
You're right.
100%.
You're so right about us.
I actually have no idea what you've been through.
Nope.
What I do know is what we're currently going through and what we've seen this past year and what we've seen from the prior administration from this man. And what I do know is that for as much as you deserve to be free from any dictator, an American dictator is not going to be better.
No.
Because again, going back to how we started this episode, they're just shooting up US citizens now that are here in the US. He doesn't even have to look at you. You're not his neighbor.
Yeah.
You're not his, he doesn't have to associate with you. This administration could care less about Latinos. If you're not sure about that, just look at 2025, right? So what do we actually think is the long-term plan? And I've also seen a lot of online Venezuelans saying like, we don't care because we also don't care about our oil. Our oil wasn't even ours because Maduro was controlling it. You're 100% right.
Yeah, you're right about that.
100% right. That oil wasn't yours either, but it should have been. And that's the point. And it's not going to be under this man either. And candidly, if things keep going this way, I just have a feeling it's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse. And we're here warning you. We're not here telling you that you're wrong for being happy to get rid of Maduro. Hey, be happy. But please listen to us when we're saying this joy is going to be very limited.
Yeah. Well,
and I wish it wasn't.
It's already been limited, but we'll get to it later on. So let's get back to, is Maduro a dictator? Maduro, dated January 5th, 2026. For the sake of time, I'm going to summarize some stuff. So Maduro was Hugo Chavez's mentee and was first elected in 2013 after Chavez died. Some of the things he did was he mismanaged country funds, he stole money, and partially due to US sanctions. To the article. This is a quote from the article, quote, from 2012 to last year, Venezuela's gross domestic product shrank by nearly 80%, according to figures from the International Monetary Fund. Inflation in 2018, for example, exceeded 65,000%.
God damn.
Which I didn't, like, how does that, math is not my forte, right? But like, how does one exceed that? Like, that's crazy.
Yo, I mean, math alone, wait a minute. If like a leche is Venezuelan peso, it went up to 65,000 pesos for leche?
I mean, that's what it kind of seems like, right?
Like, they were paying 65,000 pesos for leche? It's insane.
Yeah. So continuing on, the collapse set off
Maduro's got to go. I'm sorry.
Well, he already kind of gone.
We talk about, I know, but we're talking about egg prices here that gone up like 3%.
Right.
For 65,000%.
I have no idea. It also depends on like what they're comparing it to, right? Like point is that like he messed up the economy apparently.
Yes, no, of course, yeah.
So continuing
mismanagement. I actually didn't know that Venezuela was such a powerful economy
before. Yeah, because they had, I believe, nationalized their oil, and that's what it was.
And that was
So the collapse. Just continuing on the article, the collapse set off one of the largest migration movements in the world. At least 7.9 million Venezuelans have fled the country, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency. They're coming here. Well, one, US sanctions kind of like intentionally messed up their economy.
Yeah.
Two, they have a dictator who doesn't give a flying crap about them in the slightest. And three, they literally don't have enough money to eat. So they're literally just trying to survive. This is exhibit A of what we kind of talk about, that a lot of immigrants come to the US just to survive. They're not here as criminals. They're not here for that. They're here. They're more than happy to fill out the paperwork and do the thing in a system that actually makes sense, right? Because when you have a system that's constantly changing, depending who's the president, and when you have, I don't know, a president who's no longer having immigration judges at courts, but he's putting in a good old lawyer that doesn't have any immigration experience, look it up. It's a thing. I don't understand why it's even a question. We're talking about paperwork. I will repeat that again. All of this is about stupid ass citizenship paperwork. That's what people are dying for right now.
And remember, Trump made Venezuelans undocumented. So these people escaped atrocities, try to find a better life, applied for these programs, and then Trump took it away. Yeah.
So a couple of other things that Maduro did. Apparently, he was also appointing people to top positions who had no idea what they were doing. He interfered.
What?
Yeah.
You can do that as president?
Well, just talk to Trump. He knows it all too well.
See? These two should have been best friends.
I'm saying. But yeah, he also interfered, as we all know, with Venezuela's presidential election by imposing so many restrictions that the vote could not be considered a legitimate election. Going back to my earlier point that can take that. That's fine.
Oh, it's fine.
So independent polls also show that Maduro's opponent actually won the last election by a landslide. There are also reports that protests against his regime have been met with violence and arrests. He's also accused of drug trafficking, as we talked about, and allegedly flooding narcotics into the U.S. The International Criminal Court has also been investigating the Venezuelan government for alleged sexual violence and torture against opponents. So, generally understood. He sucks. Not great.
Typical, a lot of Latin American dictator typical stuff.
Yeah,
but nothing's great. It's unfortunately
this
is just unfortunately we have been dealt terrible cards with leaders.
Yeah,
and this is where again, oh man, I remember when J6 happened. The anniversary just happened yesterday, but originally when it happened, my my grandmother, who is from a Dominican Republic, and she was there in 1965 when the United States invaded the Dominican Republic because of the Civil War. And she remembers American soldiers just, unaliving people that she knew. And when January 6th happened and those images are first coming out, my grandmother called me in an 86-year-old woman, I think, was having a PTSD moment going, who's in charge? Who's the president? What's happening? And I'm like, whoa. I mean, unfortunately, Trump is still the president, but Biden has been elected. And she's like, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter if he's been elected. It doesn't matter. These people can just take over. It doesn't matter. These dictators. And I was like, wait, what's happening? My grandmother her body was reacting to reliving something like this in the US, and they didn't think it could happen here because that's only happens in Latin America. You have a dictator now, and my grandma felt it in her bones before she died.
Yeah, and I unfortunately think that everyone saw that yesterday with what happened with Renee. And sadly, it's been happening to Black and brown people for decades, and people haven't reacted.
Last year by the same administration.
Exactly, but and by no means trying to diminish what happened to Renee. It was obviously horrendous and should have never happened in the first place, but it shouldn't be happening to anybody, including Black and brown people. Okay, so let's pivot back just because we can go down many different rabbit holes. Going back to Maduro. So as we know, his wife was also captured, and you're like, oh, she was, that's his chick. So yeah, of course, she knows some stuff. So that's why we got to capture her.
Yeah.
Dated January 5th. And so just summarizing the article, again, interest of time, we have a lot to go through. So Celia was Hugo Chavez's lawyer before getting married to Maduro, actually. She later became the leader of the National Assembly under Chavez. She then became Venezuela's attorney general under Chavez, and then became Maduro's wife and his advisor. So she's very well versed in everything that was happening and seems to have been kind of his right hand in a lot of his actions. So for those wondering like, oh, why'd they scoop up the wife? No, she was doing some stuff.
Erica Kirk wishes.
Right. Like
Erica Kirk wishes.
Right. Not that we want to encourage women to do terrible things, but
but this is also, and I hate to give this kind of credit, but even to do terrible things,
be careful.
Even to do terrible things, Latinas still have to work 10 times harder than white women. I hate to be a feminist in this way. It's weird. Okay. Erica Kirk, no offense, I'm not judging, was what was he, a model or whatever, or
a model?
She was a
beauty pageant
contestant,
really?
Right? Yes, she was for Trump's organization.
That makes sense.
And there's word that Trump hooked her up with Charlie, and that's how they got to know each other, right? She pretty much does not really have a career before running Turning Point, but Celia, attorney general, personal attorney.
Yeah, she's a whole lawyer.
I mean, she's a whole lawyer. She was out here really
messing
stuff up on the highest level for years,
but in an educated way.
And it's so weird. Like, I don't mean to be a feminist in this weird way, but I'm just saying, right-wing Latinas have to work 10 times harder
than right-wing white women.
Right-wing white women.
It's all the intersectionality.
You know? All right. All right. That's all I'm saying. And by the way, they're not right-wing. They're more like, dictators, whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So that's just really high level, kind of who they are, what has happened so far in terms of the capture and all that stuff, right? So kind of pivoting, the next kind of topic I wanted to get into is what laws were potentially violated by kidnapping Maduro a leader of another sovereign country, right? Because even though, yes, he is a dictator and all of that, I guess we get into the whole like murky area too, because if he wasn't actually elected, right, then is he actually a leader, right? All that stuff.
Right.
But regardless, Venezuela has sovereignty. Regardless, Venezuela is a separate country that deserves its people deserve to decide what happens to their country, not another country.
Yeah.
So let's look to see if the U.S. violated some stuff. So first pulling up. Trafficking charges. Okay, so let's say we believe that. Just go with me. Let's say we believe that, right? So it's a criminal investigation. Okay, if it's a criminal investigation, then why have we taken over the country? Right?
Right.
If you were going to get a criminal, you got him.
You got him.
So it should be done, right? Like, why do you then get to dictate what happens?
Yeah.
And also, if it was a criminal investigation, then why didn't you get all the other criminals that were part of his regime? You just picked up him and his wife.
Yeah.
Everyone else was part of it.
You were there.
Yeah, everyone else was part of it. So why wasn't the plan to go after everybody that was involved? You were there, exactly.
Yeah, nobody. Like, wait, hold on. Also, narco, whatever. You wouldn't get anybody who's actually moving the drugs. I mean, Maduro isn't actually moving the drugs.
Well,
In theory, if he was, there had to be other people involved.
Yeah, and not only that, but wouldn't you? I'm assuming Maduro. Yeah, he might. If he hypothetically was doing that, then ideally he had a team, at least a team of more than just his wife.
Just his wife.
So,
but I mean, she is pretty smart.
Well, what's the plan, right? So
she's no Erica Kirk.
Oh, okay. Sarcasm, obviously. So let's go with that theory. Okay, so
crazy,
right? So moving on, another statute that's been Chapter 33, sections 1541 through 1550. So that's what covers the War Powers Resolution. And if we zoom into the highlighted language that I have there, we look at section 1541, subsection C, which provides the limitation on the president's ability to use the armed forces, not as a matter of war, but just literally to use the armed forces. So reading from that, presidential executive power as commander-in-chief, limitation. Subsection A. The constitutional powers of the president as commander-in-chief to introduce United States armed forces into hostilities or into situations where imminent involvement in hostilities is clearly indicated by circumstances are exercised only pursuant to. I'll pause there. All that means is the president can use armed forces when. That's all that means. 1, a declaration of war. Okay, we confirm no declaration of war. Cool. 2, specific statutory authorization, meaning Congress has authorized action, right? Statutory means that it's in law. Who makes laws? Congress, right? So meaning Congress has come out with a law that says, oh yeah, you can go and use armed forces for X, Y, Z. Or, and this is where things get spicy, number 3, a national emergency created by attack upon the United States, its territories, possessions, or its armed forces. Now, this seems to apply in the Maduro situation because the language doesn't require, again, an act of war to be applicable. And this is what I'm thinking. This is why the administration has been claiming that there's a, quote, invasion of immigrants or an influx of drugs, and that this is all a national emergency. If you think about 2025, the national emergency language, in the same way that it was tried to be used for the Aliens Enemies Act, and we remember it last year. Remember that? This is also why he's trying to claim an emergency, and we're being attacked, and that's why that language is being used. So that way you create the narrative that's being made up that the U.S. is under attack by these immigrant invasion and by the influx of drugs. And that's how you make the excuse that we had to go in there.
I just, I will say this, and I feel like I'm talking like a very Latina mother right now. You know, I expected this from white people, but I did not expect this from Latinos. And I say this because, you see, Donald Trump and his tech bros, Elon Musk, that a lot of you Latinos love, and Joe Rogan, all helped push the narrative that Venezuelans were criminals,
Mhm.
ruining this country.
There was an invasion.
And so many Latinos being like, Venezuelans are coming here to ruin this country. And I'm there like, they're coming here to escape a dictatorship and they need support like the rest of us.
Right.
No, they're here to destroy the country. We have to get them all out. Look what you did. Look what you did.
You fell into the trap.
Donald Trump is so good at using isolated incidents to create a narrative to get everybody to hate a specific group. And you fall for it every time. Venezuelans, Mexicans, Colombians, Cubans, none of them have a hold on evil and none of them have a hold on good. Okay? People come in all shapes, sizes, and spectrums. And for you to demonize a whole group because of one person's actions leads to the government being able to say, now we get to invade that country because one Venezuelan in the United States did one thing. And the rest of you fucking ate it up and regurgitated the same bullshit the white man spat at you. And look at where you're at now. Anyways, back to the show.
I just let you rant because I co-sign it. I agree.
I have to.
It's co-signed by me.
I am so angry at my own people who I love you so much.
And
I
that's why
love
we're angry.
you so much,
And
which
that's
is
why
why I'm angry. We are beautiful people that have no reason to be talking about each other like that.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy. I think I mentioned this before. I've had different conversations with people. I'm like, you're an immigrant. What are you talking about? Like, based on what? And they'll be like, oh, you didn't see the what? The right-wing person who Fox News decided to interview that you don't think through enough to be like, why did they put that person on screen? And you didn't think to question and look up, hey, what's the data behind this? Is this actually legit? No, you're just going to repeat the same bullshit this is a problem. That's what it is to critically think. Critically think doesn't mean to actually question experts and people. No, critically think is a means to think through shit.
Yes.
To look up stuff.
And to actually listen to experts because they're called. Do you know what the definition of an expert actually is? Someone that with a good amount of knowledge can, for the most part, predict the future. For example, if a good plumber tells you, hey, I did this work and I can tell you that it can last for about 10 years and it lasts for about 9 years and 9 months, he's an expert because he was very close to the fact that he said the job that he did for you will last 10 years. It lasted 9 years and 9 months. That's an expert. An idiot is the one that goes, I can fix your toilet and it'll last 10 years and then it breaks in 4 hours. That's Donald Trump, not an expert, a moron.
Yeah. So
thank you for letting me rant, La Co-host. It's been nice. I know you got a long one. We're only like a fifth of the way away.
A fifth? I mean, actually, yeah. So on the war powers resolution, just going back, right? So that seems to be let me just put this back on. So just looking back on this language, that seems to be another statute or law that the Trump administration violated, right? Because even though they're claiming that they satisfied the war powers resolution by notifying Congress the next day, because there is an exception, right? Like there's a notification requirement and you just have to notify them like within a certain time period. But the bigger issue, they're like, oh no, you didn't have the right to go in there in the first place. That's the issue. It's not that, oh, you didn't know. Sure, if there was actually an emergency and then you notified Congress the next day, yes, you have the ability to do that. If there's an urgent attack that it's actually happening in the moment, obviously in that situation, it makes no sense to, hey, Congress, yeah, we're getting blown up, but can we get a paper that's, yeah, of course not. That makes no sense in that situation. That's the exception to the rule. Not that I'm going to make up a narrative that we're getting attacked. Hypothetically, theoretically, however you want to call it, even though because there's no bombs, that we're not getting bombed in the US, we're not getting actually attacked, right? So you're going to claim that it's immigrants and you're going to build this narrative about they're all criminals and they're all dangerous and people are going to eat that shit up. And then I'm going to claim that those same people, because you're convinced that you're a criminal, are going to also bring in drugs and are also bringing all this crap that's ruining our country. And that'll be the basis for it.
Also, this is going to sound totally terrible and I won't go into a long rant real quick. I don't get the drug, why we got to go in there, like, because of the drug problem. Listen, I don't think anybody's ever done drugs that were, like, forced. Most people don't do drugs, you know what I mean? Ain't no Venezuelan coming to my face and throwing cocaine in my nose. Well, do you know what I mean? Like, most people, they do the drugs that they bought.
Yeah, well, I think we're getting into a different conversation. Because
you know, and I'm saying, like, we should do something about that.
Yeah.
But it is also, it's a lot more than just, I don't know. It's very confusing. You know what? Let me step back from that one.
Yeah, because like even I just want to acknowledge that, like, yes, for the most part, right? Because we can't make blanket statements. But there gets to a point that drug usage becomes a disease, right? It
disease.
becomes an addiction that people have absolutely no control over. And I do want to hold grace for that. It's just the nature of how drug use
But there's
happens,
countries
right?
like Amsterdam who make everything legal and they have a much lower rate. You know, when you criminalize it more, there's a lot more issues. I'm saying there are ways we can solve the fentanyl problem that is not invading the country.
Totally.
That is actually where I was trying to get at.
And also, I don't think that they were going after them for the fentanyl issue. I think it was like cocaine and stuff. It was a bunch of stuff. But
thank you.
But yeah. So the war power, just finishing up on this, the war powers resolution also provides that hostility of all of this. The Trump administration has 90 days to continue their BS basically in Venezuela without congressional approval.
Wow.
After that time frame, technically speaking, he's supposed to get congressional approval in order to stay there. But as we've seen from this administration, they don't really follow laws. So I'm going to guess that that's really going to be irrelevant.
Right.
But just saying what was supposed to happen.
Right.
So we know that they didn't get prior approval from Congress. And just let's take a look at what Trump said was the reason for not getting prior approval.
Okay.
Mr. President, did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
Sure. We called members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Plus, if I could add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different.
So his whole spiel is that Congress would have potentially leaked. And I don't understand how a US president or the executive branch, I guess, for that matter, can unilaterally decide not to tell Congress because they think there may be a leak. That's what happened to checks and balances. That's literally why we have branches of government. You can't just be like, oh, no, I'm not going to tell you because you're going to talk about stuff. And what's hilarious is that this is coming from the same administration that we want to talk about leaks.
Yeah.
Your actual leak, he was involved. You told him.
Yeah.
He was involved in everything. That's your biggest liability.
Biggest leaker.
He's your biggest leak. Are you kidding me? And yet you had him involved, but you couldn't tell Congress? My guess is you knew Congress would say no.
Of course.
And my guess is you didn't want to deal with that. I know it's obvious for us,
of
but
course. Gotta lay it out sometimes for people.
It's a little wild because, again, for everyone that may have forgotten, because so much has happened, PHEXF last year on several occasions, not just one, had used unsecured and unapproved methods of communication. Discuss war plans. So I don't know if he was forgetting, maybe because, as we know, Trump is a little senile now, but maybe he forgot that one of his right-hand guys is the main leak, but all good.
We can't tell Congress because we're afraid they'll tell people.
Exactly.
No, you're just afraid Congress will tell you no. Well, not even afraid. You just don't respect Congress.
Yeah, you just don't respect Congress, and you're going to keep pushing until someone does something, I guess.
Nobody.
So he didn't tell Congress. He obviously told his actual leak, but of course, he also told some other people. Let's see.
Speak with them before the operation took place.
Yes.
Did you maybe tip them off? No.
Before and after. And they want to go in, and they're going to do a great job for the people of Venezuela. Yes.
Okay. All right.
No, it's okay.
So he's talking about oil companies. At this point, I think a lot of people have seen this clip as well, where he is on Air Force One and reporters are asking him, hey, did the oil companies know? And he said before and after.
Before and after.
And they're very excited to get in there. So we didn't tell Congress, our actual government, but we told oil corporations.
We were afraid to tell Congress because they would leak it, but we told bankers. Who they tell? Was it bankers? Oil executives.
Yeah, oil
We
execs,
told
yeah.
oil executives so they can leak their pants.
Yeah, who knows specifically who he told, but basically oil companies.
Oil companies.
Yeah.
So you weren't afraid of leaks from the oil company.
Yeah. And
Which actually we're all going to be afraid of leaks from the oil company because that's how the Exxon Valdez happened. Remember that? That was a leak.
Yeah.
Killed thousands of birds.
Exactly.
So that's how we came with that palm oil thing with the birds being cleaned from oil. That's from a disaster.
Circle back.
Sorry, I lost her. What happened? Oh God. We still talking about Trump. I started thinking about ducks.
So on this issue, Marco Rubio also went on Meet the Press and had some more thoughts, which I'm sure were very eloquent. Let's watch.
You can't risk it being disclosed. But this was not an attack on Venezuela. This was a law enforcement function to capture an indicted drug trafficker. And of course, we needed the Department of War to support it.
But will you seek congressional approval for any further action in Venezuela or the region?
Well, we will seek congressional approval for actions that require congressional approval. But otherwise, they will get congressional notification. And this is not an operation that required congressional approval. In fact, this is an operation akin to what virtually every single president for the last 40 years has conducted. The difference is that when it's Donald Trump, all these Democrats go bonkers.
Shut up. So quick shout out to Kevin from Kevin Knows Why, or here's why Kevin. I always say Kevin Knows Why.
Because I always go, Kevin knows why. But here's why, Kevin.
Shout out to Kevin for the footage. But this was Secretary of State Marco Rubio basically saying, yeah, we're going to go to Congress whenever we need to, but otherwise we're just going to tell them what we're doing. That's not how government works. This is like, again, it's just, and again, the same soundbite of this was a criminal investigation. This was a criminal investigation. And if it was, why didn't you stop there?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, if this is about regime change for Venezuela, and you guys haven't said that, and if you're trying to help the Venezuelan people, then why didn't you also take out the rest of the regime?
Yeah.
In a realistic world, you would have probably worked with whoever is the opposite, like realistic opposition party, not that right-wing crap that they have over there too, but a team that actually believes in democracy in Venezuela, that has been trying to push for real democracy, to push for real elections, and then work with them to establish an election. And then put up candidates. If you actually were trying to help people, there would be a plan in place, not just go in and we're going to steal their oil and we're going to sell it and now we run stuff.
Let's just really brief. This is where Donald Trump is more of an idiot than any other president ever, because the United States has done this before. We'll probably get into a little bit. Like you said, opposition or whatever. Most of the time they do pick an opposition that is essentially the opposition is whoever's going to be best to the United States. That is their main goal at the end. But you're right. At least they work with an opposition, even if it's a puppet or more.
Someone locally.
Yes. But these people saying we're going to run Venezuela, they're not even thinking puppet government, which is I don't know, new. So this is where it's a little, what is your plan? How are they going to feed the people of Venezuela? What is happening?
Yeah, so it's a little weird. That's what I forgot to add in this morning. Damn. So there was
4 days of research on this.
Yeah, this morning I actually saw a video of Senator, I think it was Chris Murphy, talking about the meeting that the senators had where the federal government gave them a download on, okay, well, this is our plan for Venezuela. And he was like, I obviously can't get into the details, but basically we're just going to have US taxpayer dollars pay for the US running Venezuela. And basically we're just going to be selling off their oil and owning everything. And it's just like,
there is no plan for Venezuela. The plan for Venezuela is steal your oil. And then this is going to be, you know how like Nixon, you ever seen when he like left the White House, he went like this, he went, okay. This is Trump when he leaves Venezuela. Double birds with your oil. That's all he cares about. Double birds to you, to all of you.
We need to get a little like explicit thingies to cover your fingers now.
I'll do a blur. I won't do a blur.
We don't get taken down.
I'll do a blur during the edit. I'll go back and edit the double birds.
So that is US law. But US law wasn't the only thing that was involved. There may have been international law that was also violated. Let's take a the UN Charter full text, right? So if we scroll down to Article 2, there's subsections. So I'm just reading. First subsection is the organization is based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all of its members. Sovereign being the key word here. You have to respect the sovereignty of each country.
Mhm.
Point 3, all members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered. I'm going to guess this doesn't qualify as that, right? Prong 4 is all members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in another manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. So all these principles seem to have been violated off the rip from what happened, right? So let's continue on the charter. Scroll down to chapter 7 of the UN Charter covers action with respect to threats to the peace, breaches of the peace, and acts of aggression. Decide what measures shall be taken. So it's the UN Security Council that actually is supposed to decide if there is an issue between their member countries, and they're the ones that are supposed to decide what is the right course of action. They'll give suggestions on like, hey, this is how you should move forward, all of that.
Oh, so wow, it's good to that's why that's why I don't know if you have any clips from the UN people, but this is why the UN is not just Congress, but the UN's also pissed at him.
Well, I have the clip later on, yeah.
Yeah.
So then looking at Article 42, and I'll highlight it here. Decide what additional steps may be needed. You move on to Article 51. Article 51 actually is an exception to the general rule. It allows member countries to use force in self-defense and under limited exceptions, preemptively in self-defense, right? But that is in the case where bombs are about to be dropped, right? So actually, ironically, that would be in the case of Venezuela. That if they found out ahead of time, technically they could have acted in self-defense and not have violated the UN Charter. So just pointing that out.
Yeah.
So experts say that generally these are the only times that under international law, a UN member country can use force against another member country, i.e. either when the UN Security Council approves it or in self-defense. And none of these points seem to have been followed in the case of Maduro's capture. So that's why people are saying that international law seems to have been violated as well.
Yeah.
And again, it's the international world order. This is why we're not in constant world war. There's a reason why laws exist, and ideally they need to apply to everyone. Someone said it online best. If they don't apply to everyone, they don't apply to anyone.
And that is where the issue is lying. Listen, more than Maduro, what we've seen is always, and we'll get into it later. We're going to get into it later. They always freak out when it's white nations who are, being attacked or whatever. But people of color, our countries are not protected under these UN charters. They always vote against us. They always, Venezuela should have been like, you know what? They attacked us. More people in the UN should be like, we need to sanction the US. We need to do this. No, they're not doing any of that to the US.
Yeah.
The US literally killed civilians in another country for their oil, and you wouldn't even throw a sanction on us? Come on, dog.
Yeah. So
that's why Trump keeps pushing, because you ain't doing nothing to him.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, right? We can speculate on, it's because the US has nuclear bombs and everyone's scared about that.
That's number one, though.
Well,
that's number one.
It may be because of NATO, and US technically is a member country, but maybe not for long, and we'll get into it later. But there's a lot of different reasons that it could be, right? So moving on. So let's get into maybe some of the reasons, right? Why did the US go into a sovereign nation and kidnap a leader? Now that we see we possibly violated a bunch of laws, and now that we see, okay, it might have been a good thing to take out a dictator, but it wasn't necessarily through the right ways. So before we dive into the many different reasons circulating online as to why this happened, I did want to play a clip from Bernie Sanders giving a lecture in a high school that seems pretty relevant today. So just want to bring this up.
This is Bernie old and somehow young at the same time. It's wild.
Yeah.
And a lot of what politics is about, going way, way back to the 19th century, to England, France, is the domination of colonies so that big companies in a given country can take the resources of those countries for their own use. So I think that's what happened. And it was a very unfortunate day in American history. Allende won in a democratic election, was popular, was overthrown, and eventually killed. And in his place, a guy named General Pinochet took place, ran that country with an iron fist, killed many, many people, but he was okay. He was a good guy. Why? Because he was a friend of corporate America.
Said America.
Yeah.
Let me just pause here. So this is the historical background that we're going to be looking at all the different theories surrounding Venezuela in, right? So Bernie was actually talking about Chile and the election that happened there. And Salvador Allende was, by all intents and purposes, probably going to be the president at the time. But the US backed a opposition party for corporate interests, right? Because I believe Chile was trying to nationalize something or other, right? They were
I
trying to.
believe they have one of the bigger copper mines.
That's what it was, yeah.
In Latin America.
Yeah.
They're very rich in copper.
Exactly. And that wasn't a great thing for the US. And through the CIA and different other organizations, they worked with the opposition to have propaganda and ultimately ensure that Pinochet was elected.
Yeah.
So, but regardless, the bigger point is that this is common, especially in Latin America, that oftentimes the US has historically gone into countries, intervened through a myriad of different excuses, and actually destabilized the country and then kind of decimated the resources and took advantage of everything there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, people can be like, "Oh, you really care about what happened to Maduro?" I'm like, "Listen, Maduro had to go."
Yeah.
What we're tired of is the United States does this to any leader in Latin America that does not play ball with them. It could be a dictator that doesn't want to share, and it could be a leftist that wants to help its country.
Right.
Either way, at the end of the day, the business goes, how does it help me? And if it doesn't help me, I will fuck them up.
Yeah.
That's America in a nutshell.
And that's
The United
problem.
States.
And that's the problem. So, let's go into, again, some of the reasons. So, of course, Trump is claiming we're trying to help the Venezuelan people. We've gone through it again. If he's treating US citizens and people here in the US this way, do you really think he cares about you? And let's not forget that the guy who tried to overthrow the US government on January 6th when he lost an election is not going to be the person who brings democracy to Venezuela. Let's just keep that in mind. What from 2025 indicates to anyone that he believes in democracy. But let's get into it. So the next point is, did we why did this administration remove temporary protected status from Venezuelans on October 3rd, 2025? Pulling up from the USCIS website, just that same announcement, when they announced that Venezuelans could no longer be protected under TPS, temporary protected status. And ironically, we actually just covered a news story about this week, where Kristi Noem added to the confusion on the status of undocumented Venezuelans in the US, but DHS was quick to ensure no Venezuelans tried to apply for refugee status. So let's take a look at this. So this is first the video of Kristi Noem speaking that caused the initial confusion.
Well, Venezuela today is more free than it was yesterday, and it's going to continue to be that way as long as President Trump is in the White House and is making sure that he's protecting the interests of the American people, because that ripple effect will continue to bring that kind of liberty to Venezuela as well. These programs, we're bringing integrity back to them. The decisions are made in conjunction with the State Department, with the White House, and then we at the Homeland Security implement them and make sure that they are followed through. So every individual that was under TPS has the opportunity to apply for refugee status, and that evaluation will go forward. But we need to make sure that our programs actually mean something and that we're following the law. And that's how that decision with TPS was made.
Okay. So we heard it, right? Every individual who had TPS can apply for refugee status. So of course, people would think that if you are an individual that had TPS, you can apply for refugee status, because that's verbatim what she said. But DHS was like, no. So
DHS was like, slow your roll, internet.
Exactly. So after a publication posted about this video saying that Venezuelans can apply for refugee status, because that is literally what she said, DHS quickly responded with this response. People. Secretary Noem ended temporary protected status for more than 500,000 Venezuelans, and now they can go home to a country that they love. That was their response. So not only are they reminding everyone, hey, by the way, in case you forgot, we took away TPS to all these people. So Just letting you know that we don't want y'all. Like, that's what they were saying.
That is true. They actually came out and was like, yo, remember, we canceled your status.
Mm-hmm.
She was confounding two different thoughts into one. Like, we cleaned up the TPS program because of all the irregularities.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, people with TPS could have applied for refugee. But see, she confounded all her words to make it sound like now they could apply for refugee status. And that's why it was so horrible that the second there was like a glimmer of hope, even if it was like, you know, information not coming out correctly, DHS had to come out and be like, y'all going home.
I mean, well, to be honest, I'm glad they're that honest. I'm glad that like they're like, you know what? Let there be no confusion.
There'd be no confusion.
Because if anything, it would cause more, you know, like if they were like, oh, actually, and then people tried and then you get screwed over, right? So like,
yeah,
if anything,
don't waste your money.
Yeah,
you know
don't
what?
waste your money.
They
Don't
save
make
you a
your
lot.
time.
They saved you a lot of money.
A lot of money and time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this happened, and then as well, let's not forget that CCOT. Just pulling up this NPR article as a reminder.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's as a reminder.
Dude, the narrative.
Yeah.
He had to send innocent people to CCOT to make it seem like he had to send narco-terrorist Tren de Aragua to the hardest prison.
Yeah.
Because only Hood could get rid of these people.
Yeah.
Mind you, they were gay hairdressers and fathers.
Right.
You mother.
This was all part of the plan.
This was all not planned. Storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
This was all, they're telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump is, you got to give him one thing and one thing only. He knows how to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
He may fumble, he may be an idiot when he talks, but behind the scenes, he has a team that knows how to put together a story.
Yeah, I will say, I don't think it's him doing it. I think it's other people.
The team.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, watch the Diddy doc. Watch the Diddy doc. The number one thing Diddy is concerned about is messaging.
Mm-hmm.
The entire doc is him trying to figure out how does he get people online to believe him more than they believe the truth.
Yeah.
And they believe the facts.
And that's exactly what the administration does.
So sending people to CCOT
Mm-hmm.
was another storytelling tool.
Yeah.
To make it seem like he was cleaning the streets from the Venezuelan terrorist organization Tren de Aragua. Again, gay hairdresser.
Exactly. And for context, he keeps saying gay hairdresser because that was one of the people that was sent,
who was raped and tortured there.
Exactly.
And abused.
Yeah.
He came to the U.S. because he was raped, tortured, and abused in other countries. And the U.S. sent him to a prison to get raped and abused.
Mm-hmm. So let's
for a message.
Exactly. So Venezuelans who are just like, oh, yay, Trump. No, the Venezuelans that were here were deported to CCOT, have been criminalized. Let's get into another reason, because it's obviously not for altruistic purposes. They're not trying to actually help the Venezuelan people. I think we all kind of know that at this point. So the big topic in everyone's mind is oil. Surprise, surprise. For the potential reason. Knows by now, because it's been the top of mind this whole week, Venezuela has the highest concentration of crude oil in the world. But what does that actually mean? So let's look at some figures. So looking at Venezuela's leads in crude oil reserves. Crude oil.
Wow, when they said the United States really not run out of crude oil, they weren't joking.
Yeah, we're actually, towards the bottom there. And then kind of looking at
Canada, watch out.
Mm-hmm. Then looking at more data. So this is how much oil does 61.7 million barrels of crude oil in October 1997. That figure has since dropped to 4.2 million barrels, a decline of about 93%. Imports fell sharply after the U.S. imposed sanctions on the state-owned oil company in Venezuela. So again, imposing sanctions to try and to affect their economy.
Mhm.
That's the tried and true method of the US, unfortunately. Looking at the next chart.
Whoa. Can we go back a second? Did we say are you going to bring up how much Trump said that Venezuela is going to gift us?
Gift us? Oh, his
amount?
post?
Yeah, the amount?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Just keep the number, the fact that in the 90s we were buying 50 to 60 million barrels from them. We were buying it.
Yeah.
We were buying it. Keep 50 to 60 million in mind.
Yeah.
Okay? Foreshadowing.
This next chart shows where the US imports oil from, and 51% has been one of our closest allies and most important allies, and clearly where we get 51% of our oil. So if we get into a position where the rest of the world hates us and we're screwed.
Yeah.
It's not Trump, it's not this administration. We're screwed.
Yeah.
So just a reminder.
Trump is a narcissist and an abuser, and what a narcissist and abusers do is try to make you feel like everybody's your enemy. You have no friends. He is your only friend. And before you know it, we're going to be alienated. Nobody is the US passport is becoming weaker every month.
Yeah.
Because more countries are going, we don't want you here unless we know you're actually a good person.
Right.
Before being a US citizen was by default the shining example of humanity across the world. And you were able to go across the world for the most part. Now people are like, you are shit. And your people are shit and your mentality shit.
Yeah.
Not all of us.
And we're getting screwed over just because of the actions of this man. So just a reminder. Looking at this last chart, this chart shows which countries import oil. And said that the US doesn't need the oil. It just doesn't want any of its enemies to have the oil. So let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Okay. So,
Marco,
and also
how you're selling us out.
Not why do you need this? Why do you get to decide and actually, no, he just answered it. So, you might have heard the phrase Western Hemisphere, and all of a sudden we care about hemispheres, and all of a sudden the language is about, it's the Western Hemisphere. So the US owns it and the US this and whatever. So actually that kind of ties to the Monroe Doctrine, which is another concept that we all probably haven't heard about since high school in US history. But that concept of we control the Western Hemisphere is tied to the Monroe Doctrine, which I will get back to. But it's interesting as they start using language, because the more I'm in the weeds of all this, the more I start seeing the playbook. You start using language. There's a reason why they say attacks and invasion and this and it's so that way when enough people start believing it and repeating that same language. Oh,
the hell!
Sorry, the camera went down.
Oh, your weird. Finger?
No.
Oh, I don't know what happened. That was weird.
No, I was telling everyone else that the camera went down.
Yeah. Picture my crotch for a second there.
But yeah, no. So it's just interesting hearing, because as soon as I heard that, and I've been hearing the whole I'm like, why are they talking about the Western Hemisphere now? Right. So, but anyways, we heard it from him, right? That supposedly we don't need the oil. It's just that we don't want our enemies to use the oil. But there have been some reports that Maduro was actually open to selling oil to the US. Selling oil being the key word, right? Let's hear it from Maduro himself.
Ahí estuve viendo.
There I was seeing speculations about a second conversation. We have had, Ramonet, only one conversation. U.S. President Donald Trump called me on Friday, November 21st, from the White House. He was there and I was in the Miraflores Palace. We spoke for 10 minutes and it was, as I say, a very respectful conversation. The US government knows, because we've told many of their spokespeople, that if they want to seriously discuss an agreement to combat drug trafficking, we're ready. If they want oil, Venezuela is ready for US investment, like with Chevron, whenever they want it, wherever they want it, and however they want it.
Okay. So just taking a pause
Wow.
there. So this is an interview that Maduro had with a local Venezuelan news station on December 31st. And where he was discussing the dynamics with the US and the person he was talking about, like, oh, he this, he that. He's talking about Trump and the conversations that they were having. And per this video, again, who know probably don't believe a dictator, I'm gonna guess, right? Like probably not a good idea. Just acknowledging that. But regardless, it is very telling to say these things on a public platform like a local Venezuelan news station, right? Like clearly he wanted to get that message out. Now, I've seen a couple publications here in the US, and I'm gonna guess some right-wing stuff, say like talking about this footage and being like, see, he's finally bending the knee as he should, and he's finally blah blah blah, whatever the hell. But if that was the mentality, right? And if that's the perception of what was happening, then why wasn't that an attempt? The administration has claimed that they've had several conversations with them and that they gave Maduro ample opportunity to give himself up, to try to whatever, and all this stuff. And my guess is they'll excuse it and claim that it's related to the New York narco trafficking case. But this seems to potentially put a hole in the administration's claim that that Venezuela doesn't want to send oil to them or sell oil. Meanwhile, we've been importing oil, right? So like, yeah.
And he was like, I'm willing to get more oil. And this again, MAGA are horrible at negotiating because they're all like, oh, Maduro's bending the knee. Okay, so you got him where you wanted him. Running the country, you get the oil and you get
the difference. But
they don't
the difference
want
is you want to control the oil.
You want to control the
You don't want
oil.
to. You don't want to buy it. You want to control it, and you want to dictate who gets it.
Yeah, Donald Trump doesn't like paying people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump has never paid anyone, especially a Latino.
And to clarify, it's not necessarily that we're trying to advocate for this country's enemies, because I already see it. It's, because then the logic, I already in my head already see people saying, like some idiots being like, see, they're trying to claim that you should send oil to Russia, and they want no, that's not what the fuck we're saying. We're just saying that if we're living in a world where another country can come in and just take over that way, that is not a stable world to live in for anybody. Meaning that anyone can just come here and take over that way. Hypothetically, do we all kind of want that to some extent? But we may get someone shittier, right? So we don't actually want that.
So here's how we can do this for ourselves, right? You know, the Epstein Island was actually in the Caribbean. Okay, so just get a Caribbean country to just prove that Epstein or Trump did something in their country in the Caribbean with someone, and just label him an international pedophile, and then come in and get Trump.
Right, because that's the new world order. Apparently, apparently you can just go into countries and
I mean, you know, Trump did do things with Epstein, did hurt kids. Why aren't other people coming and taking him away? He's a pedophile.
Exactly. If that's what we're allowing now, right? So either way, Trump is already making it clear that the U.S. is in control of Venezuela's oil. Just look at this post from 2 days ago at this point, because I've been Timu Twitter?
Yeah, Timu Twitter.
Okay, so this is Timu Twitter post. And Trump said, I am pleased to announce that the interim authorities in Venezuela will be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of high-quality sanctioned oil to the United States of America. This oil will be sold at its market price, and that money will be controlled by me as President of the United States to ensure it is used to the benefit of the people of Venezuela and the United States. I have asked Energy Security Chris Wright to execute this plan immediately. It will be taken by storage ships and brought directly to unloading docks in the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And then he signs it like it's a email.
Like it's an official government, message.
But again, if Venezuela, if there was any part of you that read that and you're like, oh, great, that's how he's going to help us. This man isn't even using U.S. tax dollars for U.S. purposes. So what gives you the idea that he's actually going to be using the money from your oil for your benefit?
It's for him. He said it right there. I will be controlling it. It will be controlled by me. Why is the president of the United States directly controlling the amount of oil that the United States bought from Venezuela in 1995?
Well, it kind of gets worse because just yesterday they then went on to say so there I don't think there's a plan to ever give it back to
No.
Venezuela. And I again, I will reiterate. I've heard the people. I've heard Venezuelans say the oil was never ours to begin with under Maduro. I hear you.
The oil still helped you get things. You guys don't know how government works. It doesn't matter if it does matter. It matters tremendously. If Maduro was using the oil to keep 80% of for himself and 20% for you, he still needed that oil very much to keep you fed, to keep the lights on even a little bit. Without any oil, you don't have a commodity to trade in the world.
Right.
You have just lost the reason
Your
why
only
your
lifeline,
country is
really.
wealthy.
Right.
Wow, we really need to educate people.
Yeah. Well, and again, to clarify, and we acknowledge that just because your country is wealthy doesn't mean you were wealthy, and
Of
I
course.
understand
Of
that, right? Because
course.
there's a nuance
There's
there.
a nuance there.
For sure. But does not mean that your ability, the country's ability, whether your government or you, whether your government's ability to control the oil that is in your land didn't government seems to potentially be run by the US, but we'll get into that later because that's even not clear. So that's that. The something else that another potential reason that some people are mumbling about, but I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to, which they candidly should, as we talk about geopolitics and the domino effect that this may have on the rest of the world, is I'm not really sure who in oil. So technically, China has an ownership interest in this oil.
Yeah.
And Venezuela still owes all this money. And their arrangement with China is that China lends the money, and in exchange, Venezuela will either give oil and or pay the money back, right? Depending on what their funds are and all that. So this is still an outstanding debt that is in existence. China is its own, obviously, sovereign nation. And I'm going to guess that they're not just going to forget about this debt.
Yeah.
And obviously, China isn't in the best relationship with the US. So now we've caused more tension with China, who was already not a fan of us. So looking at this Forbes article entitled Maduro, Venezuela, the US, and the oil shock China price, China can't the outstanding loan that we just talked about. China has also invested a lot in machinery that specifically processes Venezuelan heavy crude oil because it's cheaper oil since Western buyers in the past couldn't purchase it. So they've also invested a bunch of money on just that type of oil processing mechanism. And the last point that they flag in the article is that the Trump administration just showed its willingness to use military force to affect China's economy. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, because this is also their oil.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much they've also affected China's ability to, because oil is used for a lot of things. It's not just for gasoline; it's also for machinery and a lot of.
It's to help the world run.
Yeah.
Oil is unfortunately a big thing, right? Like the goal is to get everyone to not use fossil fuels or all these things that are kind of ruining our environment, which is its own separate conversation. But yeah, as of today, it still runs on a lot of stuff, right? So this is a very real domino effect of this. We're not sure how this is going to play out. I'm going to guess that it's not only China's economy that has been impacted by oil, right? It's a lot of the other countries that have very real repercussions of this event.
Yeah.
So there are very real geopolitics that are happening, and I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. So now let's go back to the Monroe Doctrine that we talked about a little bit before. And what the hell is the Monroe Doctrine? Because we're not sure what it is, right? actually that was shared by President James Monroe in 1823. Generally speaking, the article describes how the original message from the US in the Monroe Doctrine was telling Europe, you guys stay on your hemisphere and we'll stay on ours. Now we understand why hemisphere is now part of the conversation.
Mhm.
That the US would not accept any European intervention in the Western Hemisphere. That was the main goal of it, right?
Mhm.
This also meant that the US unilaterally decided that it would dictate what happened to the other countries in the Western
Yes.
Hemisphere, i.e., South America, the Caribbean, and all that. I'm not sure how Canada came into play during that conversation, but my guess is
Canada was never supposed to be part of the conversation. But
Exactly.
this is when you create laws that hurt others. Don't ever think it's not going to be used to hurt you.
Yeah.
Because the Monroe Doctrine technically includes you too, Canada. You just didn't
Exactly.
think so. You thought it was only the brown countries.
Exactly. So continuing on in this article, I thought this excerpt was particularly relevant. In its meaning to justify sending the United States into other countries of the Western Hemisphere. As a result, U.S. Marines were sent into Santo Domingo in 1904, Nicaragua in 1911, and Haiti in 1915, ostensibly to keep the Europeans out. Other Latin American nations viewed these interventions with misgiving and relations between the great colossal of the North and its southern neighbors remained strained for many years.
Okay.
So obviously this is being written by the US government. So
Mhm.
obviously they're going to be like, "Oh, they were a little mad, but it's fine." That's not actually what happened,
Yeah.
right? This is actually talking about US intervention in Latin America
Mhm.
in these different instances. And I know it's framed as like, "Oh, well, we use this and we're trying to." No, this is the US involving itself into separate sovereign nations.
Yeah. One of the things that a lot of people are getting at is allies. Allies with
Yeah.
all this. They go, well, Venezuela is an ally to Russia, so that's why they're enemies. And we are allies with NATO, so if we attack them, that means we're attacking one of our allies. The Monroe Doctrine is also why there are no allyship between really Latin American countries and Europe.
Hmm.
Not strong ties. Not like
Yeah.
can you say that Chile is really strong with the UK, like they're buddies? Can
Yeah,
you say
no.
that? No. The Monroe Doctrine wasn't just get out of our hemisphere. It was also don't build alliances with Latin American countries after they build their freedoms
Mm.
to help them rise. We are the only nation in the Western Hemisphere, and maybe Canada a little bit, that have the authority and the will of God to be allowed to rise.
Mhm.
And every other country should be our voice dictating what they should or shouldn't do.
Mhm.
So that's why a lot of Latin American countries don't have ties to Europe, excuse me, and made ties with Russia, China, adversaries
Mhm.
to Europe and the West because of these stupid shit like the Monroe Doctrine that said, don't build a lion ship in my backyard.
That's crazy.
If I invade Haiti, don't you dare send one troop over here to help Haiti.
Yeah. What's funny? Not funny, but I actually never realized that correlation
Mhm.
because it is very true, right? Like whenever the US has gotten involved in anything on this side of the hemisphere. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody comes to our help
Yeah.
because
Mhm,
they
mhm.
were told a long time ago because there were partnerships. The French used the indigenous people to fight the Americans. The British were using the newly freed Spanish to get back at the US for taking their territory. Everybody was trying to help out Latin America in one way or another, selfish reasons, sure, to prop up themselves up after they got liberation
Mhm.
in order to be a little bit like adversarial to the United States. And that's when Monroe was like, stop that. Stop doing that. Stop making these people even a little powerful because that should be us to dictate.
Which is insane.
And that's where that's why they don't want you to know history. When I started reading all this, I was like, oh, that's why we have no alliance with Europe like that, because the United States was like, you make friends with them, I'll kill you.
Yeah. You know what's crazier? I actually just realized as I was putting this together, I actually wrote it down in my notes too, that I'm now starting to realize why what era MAGA has been talking about when
Mhm.
they say "Make America Great Again."
Mhm.
We've been thinking that they were talking about like the 50s or even the 1930s. No, they're like, nah, the 1800s. That's what we're talking about.
Empire building.
Yeah,
Empire building.
they're
Yeah.
talking about colonization. They're
Mhm.
talking about takeover. They're talking about, hey, remember what happened also? Fucking World
Yeah.
War.
There's a I gotta do a video of this. There's something called like, and I gotta look it up. It's the white legend and the black legend. The people in the United States back in the 1820s were sold the fact that white people are part of the white legend, that they are part of a history that is being written that is beautiful and powerful for white people. And that everybody from Latin America, because we were descendant of Spanish, and the Spanish allowed mixing of more people, mejorar la raza.
Mhm.
We were part of a black legend that we have nothing to offer this world except death and destruction and this disgusting mixed breeding that we are. And that it is the United States power, authority during this time, 1820, Monroe Doctrine, to get rid of all those disgusting mutts that the Spanish allowed to be created. They think of us as mutts, guy, mudblood, muggles.
Yeah.
So this is a little history lesson that they don't want you to know. They've hated you since 1823 because of the mix that you are.
So it's not I would agree with you, except they're not hiding it.
Oh, right. Sorry.
So well, no, not only because of what you just said, but also to subsection A, entitled Western Hemisphere, the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. Oh, look, it's our favorite doctrine that we're talking about. Let's zoom in a little bit and read on this section. After years of neglect, forces or other threatening capabilities, or to own or control strategically vital assets in our hemisphere. This, quote, Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is a common sense and potent restoration of American power and priorities consistent with American security interests.
Damn, Latinos. Saying, we are gonna fucking tell you how to run your country, and Europe better not put their big fucking fat noses in our business again.
Yeah.
And Latinos are like,
And this is why I always tell everyone, and it's not just the lawyer in me or the whatever in me, it's just how it is. If you read something and you don't know a word, please look it up. Because if you read this and you heard me just speak all these words that sound really like complex and whatever the hell, no, all they said is that we're going to go back to a time where the Monroe Doctrine, i.e., this random thing that this president said, that we're going to go and just take over everything in the Western Hemisphere. And now we're dominating again. And we're going back to empire building. That's all this like language really means. That's all it means. But again, since people don't want to look up the Monroe Doctrine and people don't want to look up these things, or admittedly, I get it. Y'all don't have time. So listen to us because shit's real.
Yeah.
It's not great. It's kind of getting worse. And they're referencing the 1800s, which again, no one had rights other than white people. So we should all be kind of pissed. Like other than white men, actually, not even white people.
And remember, slavery.
Yeah, you know that.
Enslavement.
So yeah, they're not trying to hide. And if anything, clearly laid out their intent.
out.
It's just that again, with everything that's been happening and all that, it's so easy
Thank you for that, La Co-host.
for this to go through the holes. Yeah. So now if you tie this language that we just read to a recent CNN interview that Stephen Miller gave, it gives an even more frightening view. I know his rants or whatever the hell, but like
it's important.
This is a rant, I will say, and he sounds unhinged and crazy, and he is, and that's fine. But unfortunately, we can no longer laugh at this, and we have to actually parse through the insanity that it seems like he's giving.
Yeah,
let's listen.
The United States is using its military to secure our interests unapologetically in our hemisphere. We're a superpower, and under President Trump, we are going to conduct ourselves as a superpower. It is absurd that we would allow a nation in our own backyard to become the supplier of resources to our adversaries, but not to us, to hoard weapons from our adversaries, to be able to be positioned as an asset against the United States rather than on behalf of the United States.
Sovereign countries shouldn't be able to do what they want to do.
the Monroe Doctrine and the Trump Doctrine is all about securing the national interests of America. For years, we sent our soldiers to die in deserts in the Middle East to try to build them parliaments, to try to build them democracies, to try to give them more oil, to try to give them more resources. The future of the free world, Jake, depends on America being able to assert ourselves.
So I have to pause it there for copyright reasons, unfortunately. But hold on, let me just put this guy up. Ew.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, perfect pause.
There you go. But yeah, so he's kind of reiterating a lot of the talking points that we just read, which is why I do caution people whenever we see crazy, like this man just kind of ranting and whatever, it's not just a rant, right? Like he referenced the Trump doctrine, which you're like, what the hell's a Trump doctrine? Well, we just read, he actually meant the Trump corollary that they referenced in that White House publication. And they're really just kind of running with this. So this is just the rule of the land. It's the Trump doctrine. What? You just made that up. Congress didn't approve that. That's not the law. No. You can't just come out with some releases from the White House and memos and being like, this is the doctrine. And that's the unfortunate part, that people don't critically think, right? So they hear doctrine, they assume that, oh, it's labeled that. This is the White House, this is the government saying that, so it must be the law. No, friendly reminder, at least for now, Congress still is the one that's making the law. Let's see how things pan out and if we go full-blown dictator, but technically, that's how it's supposed to work.
It's supposed to work.
So I do want to I wanted to flag that, like, yes, it was a rant, and I know he sounded crazy, and the rest of that is the clip where he's like, Jake.
Jake, I thought you'd be better than this, Jake.
So yes, insane, totally, but pay attention.
It's
and
not
don't dismiss. Yeah,
these people, you know what? This episode is putting a lot more. Thank you, La Co-host, because it's putting a lot of things into perspective. But I hope you're seeing it too. That these aren't empty words. They aren't. They're building a narrative to go back to the 1820s with make America great again. These losers, like, we were the best empire in the world and we were building, but then we started with international laws and caring about people. That's what they want. They want to be these overlords. These corny dorks want to be our overlord. These corny ass dorks.
Yeah. Anyways. So it's clear that they feel entitled to any country on this hemisphere. Yeah. And based on recent comments from the administration, it's becoming even more obvious that they have more plans for Latin America. And then it's not just about Venezuela. So let's look at just some parts of a recent, I didn't know what a press gaggle was. It's apparently an informal press conference, but someone was like, oh, a press gaggle. And
okay.
So from a recent informal press conference that Trump had on Air Force One.
Okay.
And he made some comments about other Latin American countries. So let's see.
Colombia is very sick too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States. And he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long.
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S.
It sounds good to me. Yeah. You know why? Because they kill a lot of people. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't think, so stupid. I didn't think he said cocaine mills. I thought he said cocaine meals.
No.
And I was like, what are you having? I mean, we have crack in the morning. It's called Frosted Flakes. Our kids have crack every morning.
No, he's had cocaine mills. Oh. So not as cheery. But he, these were his comments on Colombia and the administration. Different people from the administration have made even more comments about Colombia specifically, and we'll get into the other countries. But of course, coming out with the cocaine and their murders and this and the third, and again, just random statements about criminal activity with no basis, no anything, completely forgetting, I guess, that you're the whole president of the United States and your words matter and your words have a domino effect on geopolitics. And that's also why now all of Latin America feels unstable, because you keep on having their country's name in your mouth. That's a problem. That has repercussions.
In the under Trump, you need to remember everything the United States is claiming they're going into Latin America to fix. The United States created the problem. Okay. The United States, Colombia, Mexico, these countries have been trying to deal with their gang problems, with their drug problems. The issue is that Americans, CIA, all these people go down there and don't allow them to clean up the issue because they rather have the problem so they can point to it later and say, this is why we need to invade.
Exactly.
Remember that. It's all about story building. This world, more than anything, it's about storytelling.
Yep.
And the stories you tell.
Yep.
And we're trying to tell you the right story with the facts.
Yeah. So let's see
It might not be
what
the sexiest story, but it's the truth.
let's see what he said.
Because of Venezuela, now they won't have that money coming in. They won't have the income coming in. You know, a lot of Cubans were killed yesterday. You know that. A lot of Cubans were killed.
You know how many?
The bodyguards. No, they're looking, but there was a lot of death on the other side. No death on our side, but there was a lot of death on the other side, unfortunately. But a lot of Cubans were killed yesterday trying to.
Yeah. So if you notice, and again, I'm big on language. Words have a lot of meaning, especially in this administration. He's basically signaling that they're prime and ready to be taken down, for them to take it, right? Like they're going down there. And it's not like he was saying, oh, we're ready to help. We're going to go down and help like at least, even though everything that comes out of this man's mouth is basically a lie, but if at least the messaging was at least that, it's no, they're prepped. They were only able to survive because of Venezuela, but they're prepped. They're prepped to go down.
Yeah.
That's as Cubans, especially MAGA Cubans, as we know that there's a bunch of them. Yeah, y'all better be looking out. So let's look at what he had to say about Mexico. I'll go ahead and pull it up.
Mexico has to get their act together because they're pouring through Mexico, and we're going to have to do something. We'd love Mexico to do it. They're capable of doing it, but unfortunately, the cartels are very strong in Mexico.
I remember one time you actually, speaking of Mexico, I asked you about Claudia Sheinbaum, and you told me at one point you had offered to send U.S. troops into Mexico to combat drug trafficking there. Is that something you have spoken to her about?
I think she's a terrific person. I would say every single time I talk to her, I offered to send troops.
And she's just not willing?
She's concerned. She's a little afraid. The cartels are running Mexico. Whether you like it or not, it's not nice to say, but the cartels are running Mexico.
Okay. So he's talking about sending troops to help Mexico, supposedly help Mexico with the cartels. Now, when he's like, oh, Claudia Sheinbaum is afraid. Yeah, she's afraid of full-blown civil war at her country because she actually cares about her people, maybe. To make the assumption that she's afraid because of her connections to the cartel based on absolutely nothing is ridiculous, right? Especially given the amount of help and kind of everything that she's done for Mexico, to be honest. You know, and I think if anything, Trump needs to learn a thing or two from Claudia in terms of how to run a country because she's not working with the cartel. It's not through that, but go off and go ahead. What I thought was also funny about this clip is that I don't know if you heard the interviewer, but she was like, I remember you told me we were talking one time and you said that you did try to send some troops. Can you remind us about that? So I don't know who the actual journalist was, but I'm curious as to whether or not that's one of the fake journalists that the White House has kind of put into play, because what has been happening, and if you hear the rhetoric and the questions that these new journalists are presenting, they function more as like leading questions where it's just like, hey, president, here is a fake thing that is BS that you may or may not have actually told me, right? Like, and here's my leading question. So that way you have the opportunity to speak about the thing that you want to talk about. If we notice how journalists are asking questions, and if we notice who's in the room, we might realize that, oh, this is actually, again, by design. So just a friendly control of press pool that covers Trump, they already kind of worked in and are in very much control of who's asking questions and when they're asking questions and who they take questions from.
Yes.
Right. So looking at the article and pulling a quote from it, it says the White House plans to determine Press Secretary Kevin Levitt on Tuesday mean the White House will determine which outlets participate in the quote pool that covers presidential events and shares material with other media outlets.
Wow.
The rotation of pool reporters was previously determined by the White House Correspondents Association. We may know this as affiliated with the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which said the decision, quote, tears at the independence of a free press. The surprise announcement comes as the Associated Press fights to restore its access to presidential events after it was blocked.
Wow, the AP still hasn't gotten back because it refuses to use.
No. Let's remember when this was dated. This was dated February of last year.
Oh, sorry.
So this is back when they were struggling to kind of like get their credentials back in
because
play.
they couldn't use Gulf of America. Remember that.
Yeah. So this is a very indicative point, right? Because it's an attack. It was an attack on free press then, And now we're seeing the result of that, right? Like
Mhm.
now we're seeing the line of questioning and the people that they're taking questions from.
Right.
And we see that whenever they are questioned with a real question of like, what is your plan for this? What are you planning on doing with that? Please pay attention to the responses because they never actually respond.
Mhm.
They'll talk about something else. So, well, before we get into it, let's talk about this. And oh, well, it's funny that you mentioned that because this
Mhm.
and the third. Are they actually answering the question? Ask yourself that at the end of it. And is the reporter actually pushing on the issue? Now, whether or not they can is a whole different story,
Yeah.
right? Because now we're seeing how the administration is going after mainstream media and news outlets, right? So there's maybe limitations there. But I do want to caution everyone that as we're seeing these interviews and as we're seeing the interactions between journalists and this administration, not all the journalists that are in play are actually real journalists. They actually do have content creators, influencers
Matt Gaetz,
in press rooms. Yeah.
Laura Loomer.
Yeah.
Like,
That they're not credentialed like
no.
journalists that are actually
They get the questions ahead of time and they go, Trump, how do you, I'm sorry, what word did you write here? Oh, how do you plan on making Mexico better? Right? That's what you wrote? That's what's happening.
Yeah. So that's he also kind of went on to, he's been talking about Iran also and talking about a bunch of other countries,
Mhm.
but one of the other countries that is in the top of mind for the administration is Greenland. So I think you alluded to that earlier when you mentioned that people only care when, unfortunately, it's white countries that are being affected. And as we've seen, that's kind of true.
That's true.
So the Trump administration keeps talking about Greenland. Just a few days ago, Stephen Miller was on CNN and he was asked about whether military action is off the table against Greenland. And he was primarily asked about this other than his role, but also because his wife actually posted, let's put this on. Soon. So
soon.
This was shortly after the Venezuelan attack, right? So let's see how Stephen Miller responded to whether military action was off the table against Greenland. And this is in a CNN interview.
Clear that it has been the formal position of the U.S. government since the beginning of this administration, frankly, going back into the previous Trump administration, that Greenland should be part of the United States. The president has been very clear about that. That is the formal position of the U.S. government.
Right, but can you say that military action against Greenland is off the table?
It wouldn't be military action against Greenland. The Greenland has a population of 30,000 people, Jake. The real question is, by what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland? What is the basis of their territorial claim? What is their basis of having Greenland as a colony of Denmark? The United States is the power of NATO. For the United States to secure the Arctic region, to protect and defend NATO and NATO interests, obviously Greenland should be part of the...
You see?
Yeah.
You see the way he talks.
Well, I want to
clear that it's been the...
We do not take them seriously.
Yeah, and that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
He's right. The United States is the power of NATO. That's why even in, I don't know if you have...
Sorry, what do you mean by that, actually? Because I actually have no idea what that...
They are the most powerful nation.
Oh, okay.
You know, the United States
got
is
it.
the most powerful nation on earth. Highest economy, for now, highest economy in the world. We do put in a lot of money and really a lot of the backing on what NATO could do is kind of on the US. We have bases all around the world. We have technology. We put more money into our military than anybody else. So really, yeah, the United States is sort of the biggest person in the alliance. And we have more nuclear weapons than anybody else in the world. So if we could realistically, and I don't want to talk about the United States like this, we could probably with a few bombs take out all of Europe and be like, you know, US 1, NATO 0. And that's simple. And that's why people are afraid of Trump, because this is a superpower and we are the power of the world. You just thought these powers were going to always be used on Japanese people, black people, brown people, never on Greenland.
Yeah. And that's the problem. And that's why, for people listening, that's also why people say, like, don't assume that just because it's hurting others, it's not going to come back to you. Eventually, we're all interconnected. And that's, if anything, I'm hoping that people are starting to come to realize that. So the obvious huge problem about them going after Greenland is that Greenland is a territory of Denmark. This is a picture of from the Denmark government website where it's just kind of talking about its territory. But yeah, in case you weren't sure, it is. And now apparently the Trump administration is just questioning all of that. And Denmark is part of NATO. as is the US. So we're both part of this coalition of countries that's supposed to work together. And in case you didn't know what NATO is, let's get into that too. So NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was founded in response to the threat posed by the Soviet Union after World War II. Let's just take a pause there and understand the significance of NATO, right? This is part of the reason why there hasn't been a world war since. This is part of the reason why, to some extent, there's been conflict between different countries, but in terms of a bunch of different countries against a bunch of other different countries, that has not happened, partly because of NATO and its ability to establish stability, and also the UN, right? But looking at this subsection 1, where it says a political and military alliance, describing kind of the different. However, if diplomatic efforts fail, it has the military power needed to defend every one of its members. As stated in Article 5, the Collective Defense Clause of NATO's founding treaty, it can also undertake crisis management operations to help preserve peace and stability on the international stage, alone or in cooperation with other countries and international organizations. Meaning that if any one of their member countries is attacked, NATO will mobilize in defense of that member country. Now, they haven't come across a situation yet where the member country being attacked is being attacked by another member country, right? So if the US does try to take control of Greenland, then the US would be violating its arrangement with NATO technically, and it will no longer be protected by NATO through Article 5 and likely lose all of its allies. Like, let's be real, if this were to happen. And if that were to happen, it opens up the US to all of our enemies that have honestly been waiting for the right moment to strike, and potentially another world war given all of the tensions going on around the world.
Wow, the United States started by the US.
And that's the thing, because although we are focused on Venezuela for this episode, there's a lot of tensions that have been building up, intentionally so, that have been aggravated by this administration.
Yeah.
And the pot's boiling, y'all. So
Pot's boiling, y'all.
we got to be really careful with what happens next. And to make matters worse, not surprisingly, most of Europe is siding with Denmark and Greenland, of course. I wish they would have done the same thing when it came to Venezuela's sovereignty, not to mention, not to keep Maduro in power or anything, but to have the Venezuela 26. And this is pulling from the statement on an Italian government website. So this was put together by President Macron of France, Chancellor Merz of Germany, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy. Let's read it.
Damn, you even got the Italians to say, yo, chill. And Meloni, I'm pretty sure it's right wing.
Yeah. So should we read it?
Yeah, let's read a bit of it.
Okay. Statement by President. Oh, I just listed off everybody. Arctic security remains a key priority for Europe, and it is critical for international and transatlantic security. NATO has made clear that the Arctic region is a priority, and European allies are stepping up. We and many other allies have increased our presence, activities, and investments to keep the Arctic safe and to deter adversaries. The Kingdom of Denmark, including Greenland, is part of NATO. Security in the Arctic must therefore be achieved collectively in conjunction with NATO allies, including the United States, by upholding the principles of the UN Charter, including sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the inviolability of borders. There are universal principles, and we will not stop defending them. The United States is an essential partner in this endeavor as a NATO ally and through the defense agreement between the United Kingdom of Denmark and the United States of 1951.
Yeah.
Greenland,
very stern when it comes to Greenland.
Greenland belongs to its people. It is for Denmark and Greenland and them only to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. Again, would have loved to see a similar statement from these countries on Venezuela. But I'm going to guess the Monroe Doctrine.
On Nigeria?
On Nigeria. Yeah, actually on Nigeria. Yes.
On Nigeria?
Screw the Monroe Doctrine. Yeah, y'all didn't have anything to say on when things were happening in your hemisphere. So
you know what I mean? Like, again, white people protect white people. That's why we have no allies with these countries.
Unfortunately.
Because they don't give a fuck about us. I'm sorry, they don't give a damn about us.
We're yelling a lot in this
Co-host just
episode.
told me to lower it. Well, it's good reason.
People have headphones on, potentially.
Sorry. And if you have children in the car, what are you doing listening to this with the children in the car?
Oh my god, this is why we gotta work on your person so they can listen to this with children in the car. So it wasn't only these politicians that or world leaders that came into play. So another statement was issued by the Nordic foreign ministers of Greenland. This is a joint statement from the foreign ministers of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. This is also dated January 6th.
Essentially the same message. Like, hey, remember Greenland's part of NATO. The U.S. is part of NATO. Please stop trying to invade us. We want to work with you to protect Greenland.
Exactly.
Not against you.
Yeah. So
which actually they never actually directly mention the aggression from the United States. They're just reminding the United States of how NATO works.
Exactly.
Which is so stupid.
It's the PC way of being like, don't do it. They can't say like, hey, in a formal statement. I guess they could, but like they're too PC about it, which is, remember when decorum was a thing, but these people still have decorum. That's what it is.
It's just also the way these people just, even in their own countries, like misinformation is going rampant about black and brown people. And they're like, just let it go rampant. But as soon as Trump is like, we can take over Greenland, one's like, well, remember the laws say, and the structures are. I'm like, where's this?
Where's the same energy for everybody else?
For everybody else.
Exactly. So that's the Monroe Doctrine. That's a potential other reason why we went into Venezuela. Another one that has been floated about that I unfortunately didn't have too much time to research historically on other countries is the concept of installing a puppet that the US can threaten and control like it has in Latin America for years and through different countries. Now, I didn't have time to look up the history of it, but I did find a clip of Venezuela's UN representative discussing US's threats before the January 3rd attack, which I think is actually really indicative.
Everybody knows what's going on here. There is a killer prowling the Caribbean, bloodthirsty, looking for wars, and there is no justification at all. They are fabricating a war, and everybody should stop pretending that this is a complicated matter and face the truth. The emperor is naked. Nobody dares to say it, but the emperor is naked. In Latin America and the Caribbean, as in other regions of the world, the CIA is well known for its covert operations aimed at pushing processes of destabilization, sabotage, counterinsurgency, plannings of coup d'etat, and assassinations of heads of state and government, with the purpose of installing political systems subservient to the interests of the US government, puppet governments.
This is the part where I really quickly am recommending a book for everyone. It's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It is a true story written by a former CIA agent whose role from the second he joined the department was to go to Latin America and figure out ways to destabilize economies, especially economies that had, quote unquote, turned on the United States and are now, trying to nationalize their copper, zinc, all their things, and how the United States sent CIA agents down there to destabilize these countries, find out who was the opposition, find out their weaknesses, find out whatever you could to take away the power that the current government had, so you could destabilize it, and the U.S. companies can go in there and get the oil, the copper, the zinc. This man is pretty much just laying it all out. Unfortunately, the world has, especially these leaders, have known what the United States has been doing in Latin America since the beginning of the United States. And everything comes to light. Here is a UN leader saying, yeah, this is what the United States does. They ruin people's economies and then install puppet governments. And please read Confessions of an Economic Hitman if you want to learn about it.
And that's Che's book suggestion of the day.
Thank you for watching.
So just, he's, like you said, he's laying out exactly what has been done in history. And this was before the attack even happened, right? So he kind of called it ahead of time. So that is another potential reason that people have been circulating as to why this is happening is distraction from the Epstein files, of course, the good old Epstein files that we may have forgotten about, because sure enough, when the date that it was Epstein Files, filing reveals, dated January 6, 2026. So pulling from the article, first let's remember that all of the Pambandi claimed that their effort to protect the identities of the Epstein's victims were a priority, and that's why it was taking so long, as if they haven't had these files forever, but okay.
Okay.
So people are thinking this is another reason for the strike on Venezuela is to take attention away from the Epstein files and the many different powerful people that are named in it, including Trump. So honestly, I kind of believe it because as we've seen, ironically, every time there's like some deadline or some vote or something around Epstein, there's always some other wild stuff that happens. So yeah, release the Epstein files. Just a quick pitch on that.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that that
Wow.
exists.
Killing Venezuelans to distract from the Epstein files.
I mean, it's a possibility.
It's a possibility.
Do I think that's one of the main reasons? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But do I think that the timing of it all worked out intentionally? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real interesting how it all is panning out. you know?
Hella interesting.
Real interesting. But yeah, another theory less talked about, but something historical to kind of keep in mind is potentially sending quote undesirables to Venezuela. And if you've heard that phrase before, you may recall that that is tied to camp complex. But just a reminder for everyone that Auschwitz was not in Germany. It was in Poland, right? Nazi Germany purposely created a concentration camp that was their main concentration camp entirely outside of their country because they didn't want to see those people. So let's just keep an eye out if Venezuela starts shaping out to be another Auschwitz, which hopefully it doesn't. God willing it doesn't, but history tends to repeat itself.
Yeah.
So that's the last kind of potential reason that I've been seeing circulating online for why we're in there, right? Now, let's get into the responses from people. There's been a lot of different responses. A lot of different emotions are kind of circulating for very accurate reasons for, we'll get into it. But the first question I have for probably everyone that I'm not sure if everyone he wasn't standing behind him. He where is he? So just looking at a New Yorker article entitled JD Vance's Notable Absence on Venezuela, the going theory is that because the Republican Party is tapping him as a potential 2028 candidate, they're intentionally trying to leave him out of the whole Venezuela scandal because they know how terrible it is. Because they know that it's not great.
Okay.
And if this is going to be our guy, he should not be anywhere near Venezuela.
Trump protecting someone, I don't believe it, but okay, that is a theory.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's like Trump protecting him. I think it's the Republican Party protecting their potential candidate.
Okay.
Yeah. So just as a FYI, I'm not sure if everyone noticed, but JD has not been around.
That is weird. Yeah.
At all.
He has not been around at all.
Exactly. And you're the whole vice president. Why are you literally not at every single thing? But
my theory, he's been humping a couch ever since the bombs dropped.
Probably.
He hasn't gotten off that couch yet.
So let's get into Venezuelans' responses. So people obviously are in support of it because they've had to live under a dictatorship for a while now. And let's get into, and it's not only people in Venezuela, it's people also here in the US. So this is pulling up a woman that a reporter spoke to, a Venezuelan woman, and asked her how she was feeling in the moment.
¿Cómo es tu nombre?
Joana.
Joana, ¿cómo se sienten ustedes?
Es una felicidad inexplicable. Como le digo a mis hijos que van a poder ir a su país, que sea libre. Como le digo a mi mamá que voy a poder volver, verla, abrazarlos a todos y que ellos también van a ser libres. Demasiado feliz.
Yeah. So Joanna, Joanna here. So Joanna, and this is generally the sentiments. This is for everyone that's celebrating. They felt liberated through the diaspora, right? It's not only Venezuelans that were in Venezuela, it's Venezuelans in the US. It's also Paula Ramos also posted while she was in Madrid, Venezuelans in Madrid were celebrating, right? Like a lot, it's just kind of throughout the world. This is a huge deal to have a terrible person who's overruling your country be removed in this way.
Yeah.
So from that lens, and solely from that lens, I 100% understand the happiness.
Yeah.
I understand, and as you should. But not all. Let's be clear, but not all Venezuelans were celebrating or were happy about the attack. So let's look at Venezuela, how some Venezuelans in Venezuela are reacting.
De la República Bolivariana de Venezuela y no vamos a permitir que ninguna bota yanqui, que ningún extranjero nos quite nuestro presidente porque nosotros lo elegimos a él y con él nos vamos a quedar. Así que nos devuelven nuestro presidente. Maduro aguanta, que el pueblo se levanta. Maduro aguanta, que el pueblo se levanta.
So
little less of that enthusiasm, but there's people from all sides.
Yeah, let me pause this real quick. So there are people, let's not forget, because I think people are Venezuelans especially are so focused on, oh, this is great, but not, he does have supporters there.
Yeah.
Maduro does have people that have supported him and stand by him and believe in him and don't see the atrocities that he's committed or maybe got lost in the sauce with propaganda, but he definitely does have supporters that are also pissed because there's also the sovereignty aspect of it, right? Like there's people like this that support Maduro specifically, but there's also people in Venezuela that are just pissed that another country just came in and just
took their leader.
Completely obliterated the concept of sovereignty and being able to dictate what happens in your own country.
Yeah.
Right. So there are a lot of sentiments on all sides. Yes, I agree. I'm not agreeing with this woman who, like, for anyone listening to audio only, this was a protester in Venezuela who was basically saying that we're not going to allow any Yankee boots, talking about the US to come in and take our president. You know, and telling President Maduro to hold on because they're coming. They're going to try.
The pueblo's coming.
The pueblo's coming. So again, it's not necessarily the best. And it's not only Venezuelans that are protesting. This has affected the international community. There's a reason why I bring up this protest, but people in Puerto Rico are protesting as well against the strike in Venezuela.
Okay.
So
El ruido del cañón, nosotros queremos la libertad. Nuestro machete nos la
well, why are we talking about Puerto Ricans?
Right.
What does that have to do with anything? I am glad that Puerto Ricans are keeping an eye out on the situation because we have to remember, first and foremost, in case people forgot, the U.S. actually has a military base stationed in Puerto Rico. And it's Fort Buchanan. And if you didn't know, Puerto Rico and Venezuela are hella close to each other.
Yeah.
This is Puerto Rico right here. Latin America gets pissed at the US and wants to attack it. Let's take a wild guess where they may or may not go. So for Puerto Ricans, please listen, please pay attention to what's happening. And especially Puerto Ricans on the island, please keep an eye out because yes, for as great as it is, as Maduro is no longer in power, the way that it was done has caused a ripple effect and people are pissed.
Yeah.
So let's just remember that.
Yeah.
So for people in the US, I know some Venezuelans, especially online, are particularly upset at the people in the US reacting negatively to the news. I actually didn't initially realize that there are some people in the US that are asking for Maduro to be sent back because the US did seem to violate laws by doing this. And for the sake of law and order, they want him to go back. And I think that that's been a big point of contention in the conversation, which I totally understand, right? Because I can imagine from a Venezuelan's perspective that has been going through it to hear some you're in a privileged country that you've never lived under a dictator. You have no idea to be saying, oh yeah, he should go back. That's messed up, right? On the flip side, from the aspect of literal, just like law and order to keep a semblance of normalcy, to keep a semblance of just diplomatic relationships between countries. Yeah, you can't do that.
No.
You just can't go into in the same way that we would not be okay with any other country just coming.
You know,
normally we would not be okay with any other country coming in and taking our leader. So just, let's be conscious of that. It's the phrase
I mean, of course I hate Trump, but even with Trump, I want the people to vote him out. I wanted us to hold him accountable.
We don't want a coup to happen.
I wanted on when he tried to do J6 for Democrats have stepped up and actually held the man accountable and actually saw him in court.
Yeah.
But no.
Exactly.
It's impossible to hold evil people like that accountable.
So in case you don't,
it's stupid because they don't know what's going on in Venezuela. They don't from Venezuela.
We are outside the federal detention center in Brooklyn, where Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores are being held. And we are seeing dozens of people right outside chanting "No bombing Venezuela" and "No war on Venezuela," demanding the U.S. to release the couple immediately.
I think President Maduro should be returned to Venezuela, and the United States should stop meddling in the Caribbean and in Venezuela.
Yeah.
So
This is stupid.
Held, and we are seeing.
Okay. So I mean, I do want to clarify for Venezuelans that are listening. Most of us in the U.S., at least I think so, don't necessarily have that sentiment of like, oh, but put Maduro back.
No.
It's not that. At least I know I can speak for anyone that I know, to be honest. This is, again, causing a ripple effect. This is changing the world order. This is, you didn't go through any of the US's procedures to do something like this.
None of the UN's procedure.
Or under international law. And to have any one person or any one administration decide unilaterally that this is okay is a problem for the world. Because now we're going to international borders. It was already a mess here in the US, but at least it wasn't affecting literal geopolitics that much, at least. But now we're going into an entirely new stage that is very dangerous, right? So that's where a lot of the concern is coming from. So people in the US are also upset, and not to talk about money, because yes, people's lives are more valuable than money
every day.
But let's be real. Our U.S. tax dollars are paying for all of this. Our U.S. tax dollars are paying for the U.S.'s continued involvement in Venezuela and all of those plans. And it's not that we don't want to help. It's that genuinely, when we are all afraid of literally just getting sick because we don't know how much those medical bills are going to cost, and that we're still all paying taxes, yet all of our services are being stripped. All of our benefits are being stripped. Any aspect of what our tax dollars are supposed to be paying for is kind of like slowly dwindling. Yeah, people are concerned when almost $1 billion or definitely millions have been already spent on what has happened. When people are dying here, and we do need help here.
And they tell you they can't get you a swab for COVID at your hospital, but they can send bombs to Venezuela any day.
Exactly.
There's always money for war. There's always money for wars.
Yeah, and there's also MAGA, who is actually understandably pissed, and I kind of agree with them, right? Because they were like, wait, weren't you America first?
Yeah.
What happened to America first?
No. It's Trump first.
Exactly. So let's dive into some politicians. Now, unlike what the US is saying about the Venezuelan VP, she has been demanding Maduro's return. She's not, at least from what I've been seeing, it's not like she's bending the knee, or I don't know. It doesn't seem as clear cut as the administration would like for all of us to believe. So let's look at some of her words.
Ante esta brutal situación y ante este brutal ataque, nosotros desconocemos el paradero del presidente Nicolás Maduro y de la primera dama Celia Flores. Exigimos al gobierno del presidente Donald Trump prueba de vida inmediata de la vida del presidente Maduro y de la primera dama. El presidente Maduro ya había sido muy claro y había advertido al pueblo venezolano de que una agresión de esta naturaleza, por la desesperación de la voracidad energética de los Estados Unidos, podía presentarse. Y lo primero que le dijo el presidente Maduro al pueblo de Venezuela fue: pueblo a la calle. Nosotros exigimos el respeto al derecho internacional. Condenamos esta forma brutal, salvaje, de agresión contra nuestro pueblo.
Okay, so So I also recognize, obviously, not everyone listening speaks Spanish. So this was the vice president of Venezuela condemning the attack on Venezuela and demanding proof of life of Maduro and his wife after he was captured. Obviously, we know now that he's technically fine, right? Like, at least physically.
Prison in Brooklyn.
Yeah, in a prison in Brooklyn, and so is his wife. The VP also said, vice president, maybe, I guess now also president, who knows how to. She also said that Maduro mentioned to the Venezuelan people that the U.S. could do something like this, and he told the people to take to the streets if the U.S. did act, right? So he had already kind of given instructions, which again might mean some stuff. And lastly, the Venezuela demands the respect of the international community, understandably so, given what just happened. So let's look at the response from Cuban president, because as we know, Cuba is also part of the conversation thanks to Trump and him just saying things about countries. So let's just check this out.
Este acto de terrorismo de Estado que acaba de ocurrir en Venezuela es un atropello escandaloso a las normas del derecho internacional. La agresión militar a una nación de paz que en nada amenaza a Estados Unidos y el secuestro de un presidente legítimo electo soberanamente por su pueblo. No puede haber silencio ni aceptación de ese acto de terrorismo de Estado, solo comparable con los crímenes contra la humanidad que comete el sionismo israelí en la franja de Gaza. El muy oscuro objeto del deseo imperialista es el petróleo venezolano. Son las tierras y los recursos naturales de Venezuela.
So again, I understand that not everyone speaks Spanish. And just we did have the translation there if you're watching us, but if you're listening, just to summarize, he also condemned the attack and kidnapping of Maduro, saying that the U.S. violated international law. He also said that Maduro was rightfully elected and all that, but you know, Cuba is also going through their stuff, right? So, so let's keep in mind the guy that's speaking. He also compared the act. He also said this was an act of terrorism and compared it to Israel's genocide in Gaza. I don't think that necessarily was a fair comparison, right? But more so, hold on. I think he meant it more so in terms of violation of international law and all of that. So
that's where I was getting at.
In terms of scale, I meant more like, not the same, but
I mean, it could
violating,
very easily become that.
Exactly, but violating international law for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And that the U.S. attacked a nation that was not a threat to it in the first place.
Yeah.
He also said the U.S. is just focused on Venezuela's resources and oil. And I will pause there just to kind of point out, I know that the conversation on oil was primarily focused on oil, but Venezuela does have a bunch of other natural resources that I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. takes advantage of.
Of course.
I do want to flag that even though most of the conversation is oil, there are a lot of other things happening in Venezuela.
Yeah.
So I did come across another world leader's response that I think is pretty important and timely. Oh, sorry. Okay, so show siege. Okay, and let's see.
Ну, що я можу сказати? Якщо можна, так, з диктаторами, ось так, то Сполучені Штати Америки знають, що їм робити далі.
So, for everyone that's listening, that's Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. That's why I said sorry.
Yeah.
So the president of Ukraine, and for those who don't understand him, because I didn't either, there was captions. But basically, he was asked, "Oh, like, what do you think about what happened to Maduro?" And he said, the translation says, if it's possible to deal with dictators that way, then the U.S. knows what to do next. Right? Because, I mean, if we want to talk about like dictators, like
let's go to Putin.
This is the OG right here.
He killed the opposition. Didn't he poison the opposition? He's poisoned journalists all around the world. He's thrown people off roofs.
Right.
Come on, Trump.
Did a bunch of stuff.
Keep going.
Yeah.
No, you only go after brown people, right? Because the rest of the world won't care what you do to brown people.
Exactly.
Ever.
So, so continuing on with different politicians' response, we kind of already went over how Europe is responding currently to the Greenland situation. But as we mentioned, unfortunately, they weren't as vocal about Venezuela's right to sovereignty. So let's look at UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's response. His first response is what happened in Venezuela. And then we see his response to the Greenland issue. So let's pull that up.
What is clear, though, which the White House has said, is that America carried out strikes on Venezuela and captured their leader, Maduro. Some politicians in this country have already condemned that. Do you?
Well, I want to establish the facts first. I want to speak to President Trump. I want to speak to allies. As I say, I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved in that. And as you know, I always say and believe we should all uphold international law.
If the US invades Greenland, then what?
Well, the future of Greenland is for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. And for Greenland and the future of Denmark only. And Denmark is a very close ally of the UK, both in Europe and in NATO. And it's very important that we're clear about the principles applicable here. Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark must determine the future of Greenland, and nobody.
And nobody else. And nobody else. How finishes that?
Yeah.
Which
So
is like, yeah, like I said in the video I made about this, yeah, Greenland can decide the future of Greenland. What about Venezuela? Let me ask Trump what he thinks should happen to Venezuela.
that's also why I got into the history of all this stuff, and I got into the Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah.
I got into because that once you start digging into the history and the dynamics that these different countries have been functioning under since then, it kind of starts to make sense. It's definitely not right for sure.
Yeah.
It's fucked up on a different level, especially when you hear the reporter being like, other world leaders have already condemned this. Like it's just it's blatant, right? It's such an obvious issue. But because again, they're supposed allies, although the US has not been treating European countries as allies, yeah, it's a little, I get that they're not trying to rock the boat, but the boat is already on like free falling at this point. Like,
I mean, also just remember the Keir Starmer's response is also he's British.
Yeah.
With the British Empire, I think 90% of the countries on this planet they invaded at in one time or another.
Right.
Invaded, took over, controlled, disposed their leaders. We are living in a world that was created by Europe and the United States, where they become the winners and through force the rest of us become the losers. Okay, just because you haven't learned the history of how we got here doesn't mean the history ain't in front of you every day. These people are more willing to protect their sovereignty than ours. They always have been that way. They care more about Greenland than do Venezuela, because even Keir Starmer in his mind thinks maybe one day we can take over Venezuela, so let's not be so rash in taking, protecting Venezuela, because the United States is doing stuff that we want to do.
Right.
They want to do this. Remember that. They all want to do this. They all did this. They have done this, and they will continue to do this if they so choose.
Unfortunately.
Because they believe this world is theirs, not ours.
Yeah. So that was UK. And let's go back to someone a little more local. So someone else that's been a little more vocal about what's happening in Venezuela locally is Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. So looking at this press release that Senator Kelly put out, where he condemns the Trump administration's actions in Venezuela. He acknowledges that Maduro is a dictator and that should not be in power and should be brought to justice, but he says dropping bombs essentially without a plan or congressional approval is not the answer. Follow unlawful orders. This happened earlier last year, and a bunch of different politicians that used to be in different aspects of the military came together, and they're currently in office, came together to remind service members that they took an oath not to follow unlawful orders. And Senator Kelly is also a retired Navy captain. So we see him here with Navy gear. Well, so because of all this, now, unfortunately, Pete Hegseth posted on Twitter that the Pentagon will seek to reduce Senator Kelly's retirement rank in order to reduce members, hey, don't follow unlawful orders. And yeah, like this is where we're at.
That's where we're at.
So what's hilarious though is I read through, I don't know why, I decided to read through the comments in this X post. And someone asked Grok, has Pete Hegseth ever but just, I mean, Grok is also AI. Y'all know how I feel about AI, but assuming that that's true, I'm gonna guess it's true. Yeah, it's pretty hilarious. So, this was Senator Mark Kelly's response. It's a little long, right? But my favorite part comes up here at the end, where it says, if what Americans in this country get to say about their government.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that is
Let's
at.
go,
But
Mark Kelly.
but I am grateful for Senator Kelly speaking out about the Venezuela situation
Yeah.
and addressing the issue that this government is having.
Yeah.
So moving on, what is happening with Maduro's case? Looking at an NPR article entitled charges. The allegations claim that the activity started as early as 1999. He's currently being held at Metropolitan Detention Center, or MDC, a federal prison in Brooklyn. It's actually the same prison that is currently holding Luigi Mangione. And
Damn.
it also previously held El Chapo, Michael Cohen, R. Kelly, and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
Maduro and his wife pled not guilty in New York Manhattan court this past Monday, January 5th. One of the biggest arguments that his defense is reportedly considering is that he can't be held criminally liable, or he can't be criminally charged for his actions as Venezuela's head of state. If the court finds that he is actually Venezuela's president, right, that the last election was legit, then he would potentially be immune from criminal prosecution for his alleged role in narco-terrorist conspiracy if they were done during his presidency.
Yeah.
Maduro argues that he has been president since his first election. The U.S. argues that he hasn't been president since 2018. What I do also want to flag is that he's been like really chill. I mean, in the videos and like pictures that I've seen, he seemed really chill. So let's just play this quick one when he got to New York and he was being walked in.
Good night. Good night. Happy New Year.
He said like such an old Latin dad too. Happy
Good-
New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
He said, "Good night, happy New
Good
Year."
night. Happy New
Do
Year.
your thing, bro. See, look at him.
He's so unbothered.
And that's what's a little scary to me.
It's
like,
scary.
even if we're looking at looking at pictures he has with next to DEA agents, like we're talking about thumbs up. We're talking about like just kind of strolling through. And again, let's remember that his message to the Venezuelan people, like I don't want to fear monger, but I just do want to point out that there is this kind of laxy daisy energy about him, and maybe he just feels like he's going to get off, right, because of the way that he was captured, and maybe he's expecting all that stuff, but I don't know.
Hey, at this point, to be a dictator and be alive after being captured, every day is a good day.
Yeah,
to be alive. You know?
Exactly. So the next question, and the last question actually, is who's in charge of Venezuela now, right? Like who's in charge? Apparently it's the US, kind of. At this point, I think everyone heard Trump proclaim that the US is in charge of Venezuela at the press conference after Maduro's capture, but it's not clear what that actually means. So if we look, the Venezuelan VP, Delcy Rodriguez, and demanding proof of life of Maduro and he and his wife's return. And if we look at this Atlantic article entitled Trump Threatens Venezuela's New
Yeah.
and
Because she's not a puppet.
Exactly.
he didn't install a puppet.
Well, but they're trying to. So now we're looking
Trying
at
to see if she could be the puppet.
Exactly. We're looking at a political article entitled Trump has a list of demands for Venezuela's new leader. This is dated January 5th, 2026. Looking at an excerpt from that, U.S. officials have told Delcy Rodriguez to U.S. adversaries, according to a U.S. official familiar with the situation. U.S. officials also expect Rodriguez, the former vice president now running Venezuela, to eventually facilitate free elections and step aside, the two people said. But the deadlines for the demands are fluid, and the U.S. officials stress there are no elections imminent. So if the U.S. is running Venezuela, why are they allowing Maduro's team to stay place?
Yeah.
Why, like what every...
But also telling Delcy that she has to cut every single tide. I mean, I think Ronnie Chang said it's like, that's what's always sad about abusive boyfriends. They come in and tell you can't talk to anybody you used to talk to. And that's what he's doing. He's like, you can't talk to Cuba. You can't talk to Russia. You can't hang out with China. You can't hang out with Iran. Like anybody that like used to like you before, I'm threatened by them.
Exactly. So Marco Rubio, our
girl, learn to like yourself. Which, by the way, is a message. The more you know, the more you like yourself, the less you care about these kinds of things.
Agreed. Well, what's these kinds of things? What do you mean these kinds?
Oh, like invading other countries
Oh.
because you're just too busy like loving yourself and realizing that you're worth it. That like whatever somebody else says about you, it's not going to affect you like that.
So you're just telling the Trump administration, y'all should love yourselves
You
more.
need to love yourself.
And
you should go and love yourself.
So Marco Rubio was asked the question of how things are going with Delcy because there is so much confusion and everyone's like, we're hearing one thing, but we're seeing her comments and it's different.
Stupid. This is what camera keeps zooming in on me when I don't want it to. Go on.
So let's look at how he responded to George Stephanopoulos on ABC.
George.
The president said that you spoke with the Vice President Rodriguez and that she promised to do whatever the United States needs. But in her televised statement, she was pretty defiant, saying that Maduro is still president and that the Venezuelan people will no longer be slaves or the colony of an empire. That's a quote. What exactly did she say to you and what comes next?
Well, we're not going to judge moving forward based simply on what's said in press conferences. We want to see action here at the end of the day. Rhetoric is one thing. You see rhetoric for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of different reasons why people go on TV and say certain things in these countries, especially 15 hours or 12 hours after the person who used to be in charge of the regime is now in handcuffs and on his way to New York.
Yeah, so basically he said a whole lot of nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just want to point out that that's another reason why I wanted to have his response here, because this is a perfect example of not answering the question. Yeah. He asked how things are going. He's like, well, we can't listen to what the da-da-da, whatever saying. Okay, you didn't answer the question. How are things going? It's working, or we're having some difficulties.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, like not even that.
Nothing.
And I think that's the general kind of direction that the administration does with whenever they are presented with a question.
No, of course. They're all learning as Trump calls it, the weave. The weave. You come in with a question, hey, are you going to invade Mexico? And then I'm like, you know what? Tacos are delicious. And before you know it, you come back, but you never really answered anything.
Exactly. That's their mantra. And some people thought actually that Trump would appoint the opposition leader in Venezuela, Maria Corina Machado, but he didn't, because according to sources close to him, he is upset that she didn't decline the Nobel Peace Prize. So looking at this article from the Washington Post entitled U.S. Plan to Run Venezuela Clouded in Confusion, dated January 4th, 2026. In the article, that's part of why Maduro didn't let her run, because of the amount of support that she had, and he knew that she would win. So that doesn't really make sense either, right? So if we look further into the article, it says 2 people close to the White House said the president's lack of interest in boosting Machado, despite her recent efforts to flatter Trump, stemmed from her decision to accept the Nobel Peace Prize, an award the president has openly coveted. Although Machado ultimately said she was dedicating the award to Trump, her acceptance of the prize was an, quote, ultimate sin, said one of the people. If she had turned it down and said, I can't accept it because it's Donald Trump's, she'd be the president of Venezuela today, this person said.
Sure.
Well,
sure.
If just in case, when Machado was on Fox News, let's see how she responded.
Did you at any point offer to give him the Nobel Peace Prize? Did that actually happen? I had read that somewhere. I wasn't sure if it was true.
Well, it hasn't happened yet, but I certainly would love to be able to personally tell him that we believe the Venezuelan people, because this is a prize of the Venezuelan people, certainly want to give it to him and share it with him. What he has done, as I said, is historic. It's a huge step towards a democratic transition, and I want to convey this to the American people, Sean.
Oh my God.
So
Machado, come on, ma'am. You're not going to get him to give you everything you want if you throw yourself at his feet. No.
Yeah. So she's not, and it's just another example of someone who's going to realize how pointless it is to try and suck up to this man. But
for a prize.
And again, to the Nobel Peace Prize committee, this is who the hell you decided to, like, are you kidding me? There was no one else. I'm gonna guess that there's a lot of other people. But yeah, so apparently reports are saying that Stephen Miller is being considered for a top role in Venezuela, which was another
fuck you.
which you're not saying to me for this.
No, Stephen Miller doing this.
Yeah, so apparently he's being considered for a top role, which I also thought, if this was a criminal investigation, why do you have the immigration guy there? But All good. So looking at a Washington Post article. So that same, we're going back to that same Washington Post article we were just looking at, but in a different section, it says the White House is weighing giving Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy White House chief of staff, blah, blah, a more elevated role in overseeing post-Maduro operations in Venezuela. Miller has been the architect of the administration's anti-immigration and border policy and took a central role in the effort to remove Maduro. He was among the handful of top administration officials flanking the president during the news conference Saturday at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club. And that's exactly right. Again, pointing out that J.D. Vance was not there. But yeah, this would not be good for Venezuela. When he was asked about his potential role, he had this to say.
Stephen, you were part of that group, the select group that the president said is his staff that is running Venezuela. What exactly are your day-to-day responsibilities?
The President of the United States has asked Secretary Rubio, who also happens to be his national security advisor, to directly, of course, under the president's close guidance and direction, to be the lead on this process. But obviously, there's many other elements involved. You have energy policy, treasury policy, financial policy, military policy. So it's a big team, a group of people. Everybody's working great and closely together. Under President Trump's leadership.
What are you specifically doing? What are you specifically doing?
I make a habit for not to talk too much about myself. I'm just happy to serve on this incredible team on behalf of President Trump, do whatever I can to support the president's agenda and direction.
Yeah, so they don't have a plan.
No,
that's what that is. It's all of nothing. He once again didn't answer anything. Like
I take actually his non-answer as an answer. I mean, they're saying that he's going to have a role and he's not telling people what his role in Venezuela is going to be. And this is again, I'm angry. I'm angry that the man who made his entire career demonizing Latinos and creating this narrative that we're all criminals and we should also send back to our country because we're polluting the blood of this country is now in some way in charge of the same people that he has been demonizing since the beginning of his career. Damn, dude. Damn.
They're setting them up to completely
dude.
be eviscerated. Yeah. And in case you're like, oh no, we're being hyperbolic. After a short period of celebrating and as expected, looking at another Washington Post article, quote, fear grips Caracas as a new wave of repression is unleashed in Venezuela. This was updated January 6, 2026. And it says updated yesterday, but I took the screenshot. And so as of then. So reading the excerpt of it, Venezuela's government has moved quickly to suppress any public expression of support for Maduro's ouster, launching a nationwide crackdown that has included the detention of journalists, the arrest of civilians, and the deployment of armed gangs across the capital. It feels like it did after the presidential elections in 2024, said Maria 54, who, like others in this story, spoke on the condition that they'd be identified by their first name or on the condition of anonymity for fear of reprisals. We won, but we also lost, she said, referring to the country's last elections in which Maduro claimed victory despite tallies showing the opposition had prevailed. So this is just a quick summary. I welcome everyone to kind of go and read the article, but it goes into the details how that the Venezuelan government is actively trying to find who helped the U.S. They're not like happy about this. They're not just taking it sitting down. And if I had to guess, because this just happened, my guess is that they're planning and plotting and probably plotting with their allies, because I don't know if people saw, but you had Chinese representative, you had a representative from Iran, you had a representative from Russia at her swearing in, at her.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So I believe it was her swearing in or another meeting.
Yeah, but they're showing like, hey, we're here for her.
So
yeah.
It is really important to not just assume that this administration, that the U.S. administration is being honest on the status of these things, because clearly they can't answer one question with a straightforward answer, right? So unfortunately, that's where things are at in Venezuela now. And as of yesterday, as if that wasn't enough, it looks like the U.S. now sees 2 oil tankers, including one Russian flag tanker.
Yeah. It was flying under the Russian flag.
Yeah. So looking at a Reuters article entitled U.S. seizes Russian flag tanker tied to Venezuela as Trump widens oil push. This is dated January 7th. And the summary, just reading from it, and this will be the last point here. The U.S. tanker that escaped, this is a U.S. boarded tanker that escaped blockade and put up Russian flag. U.S. also seized second Venezuelan-linked tanker. Venezuela's main buyer, China, denounces U.S. bullying. Oil prices fall on anticipated supply increase. So, moral of the story is that it's not looking great.
It's not looking great.
And that's where things are at with Venezuela.
Yeah.
I know that was a lot. I'm sure there's stuff I missed. I'm sure there's stuff I missed.
And that's where you can leave it in the comments.
And that's where you guys come in. So if there's anything that I missed, also, if there's anything that I misstated and you're like, oh, actually it was this, feel free to leave it in the comments. Please leave your source because we're a fan of sources.
Yeah.
Please leave your credible source.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're hoping for the best for Venezuela and for the entire world, including us, because at this point, there's a lot of moving parts and it's really genuinely not looking great. So, yeah.
Wow. This episode even enlightened me, taught me a lot of things about how the narrative was built, constructed, pushed out, and then eventually the action was taken. And just please share this episode with anyone. I know it's a long one. Find your favorite clip, figure out a way to send it to people. We're also going to clip this. It will be all over our social media. So you'll be able to find clips of it on, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Substack, of course, Che Guerrero ENG on all those platforms. But send it out to people so they can see how the narrative was built, how it was pushed out, and eventually how it was used to destabilize our country once again. These people are back to the 1820s method of doing all this.
Yeah, now you guys know what era they were talking about when they said make America great
again.
They mean to make it great for white men.
Yeah. Oh, forgot to say in all this, Happy New Year.
Oh, yeah, Happy New Year.
We haven't talked to our fans since the New Year, since 2025.
If you're still listening, that's another
Happy
episode.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Sorry to start you off this way.
I just knew it was a lot, so I wanted to dive in. But yeah, Happy New Year, y'all.
Oh my gosh. But I guess anything else we should cover before we get out of here?
That's it. Thanks for listening. I know this was a long one. It was a dense one, but it's a dense subject. And I'm hoping that this was really helpful to kind of get an overview picture of where we're at. We will see how things unfold, but hopefully it is peaceful and not any more violence. But we will see.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much. Like I said, this was a lot because they throw so much at you to confuse you. So as always, I want to thank La Co-host for doing these deep dives and putting us on the right track. I feel like a little, this was heavy, but I feel a little more knowledgeable about what the plan is and how to stay focused moving forward. So I hope you got that as well from us.
Yeah, and actually that's actually a good point. The goal of this was also to help people kind of push out the noise. Like, yes, I added some funny stuff in there
people.
Or whatever. Yeah, exactly. But to help kind of focus the attention on the bigger issues that are in this, because it is very complex. And again, I've been working on this candidly for months at this point, because the goal was to start talking about it when they were bombing boats, and then everything kept on developing until we were just like, all right, we have to just talk about all this and figure it out. But yeah, so hopefully it was helpful. Thanks for listening. We will see y'all next time.
Yeah, but as always, take care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Say bye, La Co-host.
Bye. Bye.